All right. I'm refreshing the screen to make sure our sound is good.
Yeah, I've got my earphone in to make sure as well.
Hey, waiting, but I put live. Is it just
I
still
think
the
it takes a couple of minutes for it to, not a couple of minutes, a couple of
Yeah, a
seconds for it
couple
to
of
go
seconds.
live.
Yeah,
there
I'm
we
trying to
go.
get in contact with my mom because she's always on the live. I mute
We
myself?
are good to go now. I've got it on there. Y'all, we're all friends, so we just get to talking, and then I'm like, whoa, we're late.
Well,
Oh
we've
no,
just
Courtney's
lost
voice
Courtney.
disconnected.
Oh no.
Oh.
All right, yeah, so we were all in the background, in the back room, all chit chatting, forgot, oh yeah, we're supposed to go live.
But then we decided to make it part of the conversation. So we're talking about when dealing with classics, there's outdated terms that are now either just seen as outdated or offensive. And it's hard to kind of navigate that and to figure out what terminology do we use, especially when we're talking about something that was written with a historical context. So that's kind of our little talking point to begin this discussion. So, yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
Because this
I
book
just had a
uses
voice
all
going
the
in my
terms
ear.
you can think of. So,
Yeah, there's a bit in here. um, but it is hard to. It's a when you are reviewing a book like this that does have the outdated terminology, and it is hard to navigate that language without offending people and whatnot. And as Courtney said in the back room, as long as you avoid that particular word, um, you know, we all know which word we're talking about.
oh,
I
Yeah.
think we're going to be
say it.
okay while we're talking about the classics and stuff like that, because I mean it is a topic of discussion when you're talking about stuff like that. And yeah, I mean I don't know how you guys feel. I just know that I struggle with navigating it.
Yeah, I didn't think. I feel like in this book it wasn't too bad. Like I'm not to mention another book, but to mention it, like I don't know if y'all ever read Marlon James. I'm in the middle of this.
No.
You can't really avoid it. So in a book like Iola Leroy, I don't think it was as bad and overused. But yes, I do think that you got to kind of figure out the time period. Like, even if you're someone that takes offense to certain words, you got to think of the time period that you're in. But at the same time, like when you're discussing it, you definitely got to think a little bit more modern time period for that. And I remember the forward. So the book was written in what, 1890, what
I
17
think so.
1896?
It was before
92.
1900.
1892. So the
Yep.
forward, I did the audio book because I didn't realize till I looked at Heather's video today. It was on Kindle Unlimited because the one I saw you had to pay for on Amazon.
No.
But there was a forward by a guy. Like mine was saying, did y'all any of y'all do the
William
audio?
Steele.
Yeah, I think so. This
Yeah,
is talking
William
about
Still,
part of the
yeah.
public domain. Yeah. And so
Yep.
he used the word initially colored. And I was like, I was taken aback, but then I had to kind of, detox of what time period. But I was curious, when did he write the forward of the book? Like if
That's
that
what
was the
I'm
same
wondering
time
too. I
frame.
wonder if it was in the original book.
Oh, it was? Okay. So that puts it
I
into
don't know,
perspective.
but I'm wondering if it was.
Well,
But
he
one of
also uses the term Anglo-African race in the first couple of sentences. He uses that
Yeah,
term as
that
well.
definitely sounds like that same time period.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was an interesting forward, I will say, when it comes to that. Like that kind of threw me off. And then he was talking about, I guess she was an upstanding person, and he was concerned that this late in life that she would disgrace her race by writing a book that wasn't good. And I
oh,
was like,
before he read it.
yeah,
Yeah.
before he read it, I was like, what in the world am I getting into?
She, Frances Harper, she was the first African American woman to get published. Is that correct?
That's what it seems like in America.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay,
which
cool.
is so
Well,
interesting
for those
because
that don't know and can't tell by my accent, I'm actually in Australia, so a lot of a lot of the history, American history, I didn't cover in school. When I went to school, because I'm in my 50s, so when I went to school, it wasn't really covered in school. It is more covered in school now. So for me, a lot of this is actually I'm learning a lot of the history behind the Civil War and all that sort of stuff because I've been reading a lot more books on it. So for me, it's quite interesting learning about how everything was played out and who everybody was and why it played out the way it played out and it's quite interesting some of the research that that I've come across that America seems to be the only country that not the only one but one of the only countries that actually went to civil war over slavery when the world was trying to abolish it and whatnot, whereas a lot of other countries went about it a different way. And so I find that very interesting as well, that I've learned from reading the books that I've been reading through book clubs and just general research and whatnot. So yeah, that's another little interesting thing that I thought, wow, that's
I never even thought of that. Have you ever thought of that, Feather? Because us Americans, no offense, we're kind of introspective. I don't really think of other countries of how did they get rid of it as well. That's I know it was before America, I believe, but I never even thought of that.
It was really interesting. Like I just thought that everybody went to war over it through my own naivety. So but when I was researching it, it was quite interesting that this was a common theme that kept coming up, that the US was one of, I think the Spaniards went to war with someone over slavery as well. I'm not 100% on that, but America, it kept saying that your war, I think, was the most prominent one and the most detailed one and the most talked about one. And that's why, and most prevalent in our most recent history as well. And as you said, America was one of the last countries to abolish slavery. So yeah, it's very interesting. It's quite a rabbit hole to go down, but if you get a chance to do it, go and research it because it is quite interesting.
I didn't even know the reason why people hated Columbus so much, because I knew people hated him and that he was like this bad guy. But you don't find that out until you're out of school, because in school, I live in the Bible Belt. And we have Columbus Day. Like, why? Why do we have Columbus Day?
That's a day for me to get a day out of work. But I'm like, yeah, he's not a good guy. That people, yeah.
Because in this, you find out like he did his own slave trade with the Native Americans.
He was the original.
And I was just like, oh my goodness, like 100,000.
He was the first OG when America, when it comes to that. But back to what you were talking about, Nicole, about like even the Civil War. Like the Civil War originally, now granted, I'm in American school system, but the Civil War was not initially fought over slavery. That was just one of the issues with it because the North wanted us to abolish, but that's not even the reason that it happened. So,
well, tell us more because I don't even know.
Yeah, you tell me. Like I said, I'm a product of the American public school system, and it's been a minute. I'm in the 4-ish, so it's been a while. But I just know that originally, the Civil War was not fought for slavery or over slavery. It was just one of those things, one of those, what's the term I'm looking for? Not concessions, but it was just one of those things that the North wanted to abolish it. So they kind of tacked it on in there. And then the South was kind of hold on to it. But
okay. So do you know, like, what was the original reason that the Civil War started? Because we've always just been told that it's always been about slavery.
No, I think, what was the original? See, the American school system. No, I think that it was it land? South wanted to.
I think I actually read something about farming land.
About what?
About I think it was it originally started about the North wanting to progress further into the South for farming land.
I think they wanted to unionize everything together.
Yeah, like to make the trade better, and I remember reading something about trade and farming land and all that sort of stuff. So, let's see, it's a rabbit hole.
Y'all, that we ain't even got into the thing that's happening in the book. This is just the history stuff.
I know. I'm Googling.
Y'all, I messaged these hosts on here before the show, and I said, "Hey, I don't think we need any games because there's gonna be so much to discuss."
So like the original book, but you can
Have we got
probably
the
see
same
that we're holding up this one. This one we got off Amazon, and it was like, I think it was like $8, $10 or something
Yeah.
along those lines. And it's just a printed version of it. It's not the correct format. So the original book is only got 208 pages, I believe, in it, or 220 pages. For such a short book, it really does like hit home and really packs a punch. And I think Frances Harper has just done an amazing job of getting her story over, incorporating the dialogue of the day as well into the book, which was a little bit tricky to listen, like to read. So I ended up getting the audiobook so I could listen and read along with, which that's my favorite way of doing it. Any sort of classic, because it helps you to understand the language a little bit better when you're seeing and listening to it at the same time. I just could not believe how much she got into such a short book when you can read other books that have like 900 pages in them and nowhere near the impact that this book would have on the general public if more people read it. Because
I cried
no
on
one I know
chapter
has read it.
7. I cried on chapter 7.
What was in chapter 7?
Tom.
Oh, yeah. I was like, no. I thought they were going to get together. I don't know why.
We'll get there, y'all. We'll tell you about Tom.
So for y'all books, for the audio book, Heather, did you do audio as well?
Yes, I followed. Okay. So I sat there and I just read with the audio.
Yeah. So did yours have mine at the beginning? It kept saying, like at the beginning of each chapter and at the end, it said, this is part of the public domain. Something. It was like at the beginning of each chapter. Like if I actually timed it out with the amount of time that it spoke at the beginning and end of each chapter. It was like a full like 30 minutes.
Oh my God.
Of saying, hey, this is produced by Harper Audio, and this is part of the public domain, blah, 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 unabridged edition. I'm like, darn, every chapter? I don't know. Okay, maybe it's the version I got.
No, I didn't have that. I got mine through Audible.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I used Any Play. Okay. I was just curious if everybody else had that same experience. It probably was just how they bought it.
Yeah.
And then I had to look up what's public domain.
Well, that means because it's over 100 years old or 70. I think in the US, if it's over 70 years old, here in Australia, I think it's 100 years old. So if it's over a certain amount of time, the book, if it's not challenged by any sort of organization or trust or anything like that, can go into the public domain, which means then it's free for all. So places like that platform that you use can take it from the public domain and put it onto their website and not get copyright infringement or anything like that. So that's all that means. There's a lot of classics in the public domain. I think the Gutenberg project, they have all the classics in text form on there, so you can go in and, unless of course it's got copyright, because there are some classics that still have copyright because they're part of a foundation or a trust or something like that.
I think Peter Pan is like that, where you have to like write the family or whatever for permission. They grant it, but you still have to like write it, I guess.
They're like, we want our royalties. I'm not a big classic reader, so that's the first that I've ever seen that like that. So, okay.
Well, Iola Leroy is definitely in my top 2. My other one is the Count of Monte Cristo. So,
well, you're a big classic person.
And
that's what I think is interesting, because you've read a lot of contemporary lately, but then you've also dabbled in the classics. So, which do you think you like better?
Oh, contemporary.
You're like, I want a Merry Little Meet Cute.
I just started reading the classics.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, because I read I think it must have been the end of September. I was playing Bookopoly-thon, Becca's Bookopoly-thon. And one of the roles was like for an audiobook or something like that. I can't remember. And I was like, and it was an audiobook and an ebook. So I was like, maybe I got an ebook with an audiobook version. So I'm going to go and see the first book I downloaded on my Kindle. And I'm just going to scroll up till I see one that has audio. The first book that I downloaded that had audio was Pride and Prejudice.
Oh, there you go.
So I start laughing like it's on this channel.
That's my movie right there, but I've never read the book, but I love the movie.
Yes, I was laughing. I was like, y'all, am I really going to do this? Am I really going to do this? And I was like, you know what? We're going to do it. And I loved it. I thought it was a 3-star, but for a classic, I was like, this is really good stuff. And so then I was like, you know what? I went to Barnes & Noble. I found these pretty editions of the Dracula, Frankenstein, and Wuthering Heights. So I was like, let's do I Read Dead People, and we'll read those 3 books that I just bought, because I knew I wasn't going to sit there and read them on my own.
So, see, I thought that you like classics. I thought that's why you started I Read Dead People. Okay.
I have a series on my channel called Friday Classics, because I do read a lot of classics. But I'm only new to reading them as well, because I avoided them like the plague, because they were forced upon us.
I had to read Wuthering Heights in high school.
Yeah. So now I'm reading them all.
Yeah. Speaking of classics, I felt that this book read to me like a British classic. Like I felt like, okay, granted, I had the audio, okay, but I feel like the audio very much felt like in just the language. You know how, I don't know how to describe it. I call it flowery language, when you use a lot of words to describe one particular thing. Not like the rattling that I do, but more of like, how British literature describes everything in bigger words. I felt it was that way, but except for the dialogue with some of the people, I felt the dialogue was on point. Like
it felt so
Uncle Daryl, what's his name? Dan, Uncle Dan. It was awesome.
Yeah. I think it was, as Heather just said, it felt like it read modern. It didn't feel like a book that, for me, that was written back in the 1800s. This felt very, I guess,
fast almost.
Yeah. It was fast paced. It was, and it felt real. Like, even though some of the language was very, as you say, flowery or flamboyant or overly descriptive and things like that, but it still didn't date the text for me. Like, I found it, as Heather said, very, very modern. I still felt it was prevalent for today as it was back then.
Yes, as far as the context, I completely agree.
Yeah.
Especially towards the end, yes.
Yeah.
So I guess let's start talking about the book from the beginning to the end, as far as the actual timeline. So let's discuss Iola's parents and what you think about their relationship, because Iola's mom was a slave who married her plantation owner. So Iola's mom was white passing, and then she, married into the house. He sent her to the north, had her educated, but then also didn't tell his family members, except for his cousin or something?
Yeah, Lorraine.
Yeah. And the cousin was not happy about it, because back then, of course, race was not just what you are perceived as. It was like, this is your ethnicity. This is what your blood is made of. So if you've got one drop of anything that's not fully Caucasian, basically you are property. And so, I did not like that cousin, but also I was not, it's still interesting with the romance, because it's like, now when we look at interracial romance, of course, there's nothing wrong with that. But back then, it's like there is that power dynamic. Like, she was literally in captivity by him. So, like, how do we feel about the romance? Is he a good guy, or is he not a good guy? Because he did have slaves. So
I think he wanted to be a good guy. What threw me off with him initially, I think he was in denial. Do you know, the whole time I was listening to him, I was thinking, this is Prince Harry. Denial that race does not matter. Y'all feel me? I'm glad y'all feel me.
Seeing all of the Spare. I've been watching a lot of the video reviews about the Spare.
Yeah.
And people talking about it. And that's exactly what I was thinking, which of course
Thank
I
you.
read the book before everyone was talking about that book, but every time I would watch one of the reviews about the spare, I thought about this book with him.
Yeah. Well, I completely felt that he was in denial, but also I did not like that I wrote a note about it. I think he said that he married her because where is it at? Something about it was to honor her because she stood by him. I'm like, why did you release her, free her, and then send her to the north? But you're gonna marry her. Where is it at? Something about he honored her. Want to reward Marie for her loyalty, so he married her. And I wrote, why didn't he just free her and send her to the side, to the north? I was just like,
I had the same opinion. I'm just like, dude, come on.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah, and then you're gonna tell Lorraine too. Like Lorraine, you already know his opinion. So,
Yeah.
well, I guess you can't hide that she was a slave. People would have known, but I mean, yes, he was in denial.
Yeah, and I agree. He wanted to be a good guy, but just didn't. He lacked the courage to be a good guy because I said in somewhere in the book he actually said that he didn't want to go. Like he understands that it is wrong, and he, because he was questioned. Well, why don't you free your slaves? He didn't want to go against the status quo of the day. So he didn't want to go against public opinion because he felt that he would be condemned if he did that.
But
And I think that was just a cop out. Like, really? Like, but then
I
again,
also felt, oh, go ahead, Heather, sorry.
He was also a little delusional, like what you were saying, Courtney, because part of what he had said was that I could free them, but they wouldn't have it better if I did, because like I'm feeding them, I'm giving them clothing, and they have family members that have been sold to other plantations. So I would actually be taking them away from their family if I was to free them.
Yes. And that's what I was going to say. So I felt like he was delusional in some aspects and woke in others, because when he did say that, I was like, you know what? That's a very interesting way and a very introspective way of thinking about it, because where would they go? They're poor, they're Black, they're in the South. They probably have it. I mean, the reality of it is on his plantation where he treats them good, where he doesn't whip them, because it seems like he actually treated his slaves well, and they were taken care of. But I felt like for the time period and where they were at, besides, of course, not being free, they had it good there. I mean, if you want to say they had it good, but yeah, but I felt like he was very introspective and thinking of the condition of that, of what they would have at that time period of keeping them. But I was still thinking he's delusional, but yes, he's kind of straddling the good guy, bad guy role.
Yeah.
I think he really was in love with his wife.
Say it again?
Yeah, I said I think he really was in love with his wife.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I think that their relationship was real. It's just interesting that it came with that whole transition and everything.
Yeah.
And then putting her in a situation where she's telling him, like, hey, I'm scared. If something happens to you, they're going to throw me back into slavery. And he kind of disregarded that.
Yeah.
He just
didn't. That was interesting. Yeah, I didn't get why they stayed down, like knowing what's going on around them. Because remember, his family wouldn't come visit him. Like none of the women, the white women, wanted to be basically in a Black woman's household. So none of the wives came to visit him, and only Lorraine came, right? And so I was sitting there thinking, like, if he's pretty much her only lifeline into stuff, because none of the other people and the surrounding people, and I understand at that time period your world is actually really small. It's not like people traveled so much. So what happens on this plantation stays on this plantation. But if you have only this one guy to kind of vouch for you, then what happens if he's not invincible? And that's exactly what happened.
And that was her concern. And as Heather was saying, it just fell on deaf ears. He was just totally ignoring the fact that she was actually scared for her well-being, and it was just he just kept going. It's fine.
Yeah,
it's
she
fine,
should have pressed the issue more for sure.
Yeah, dude, it's not fine.
Yeah.
It kind of added for me too when I watched the show that they have out now, Kindred. because you get to see, it was very useful for her to do the storytelling and have the guy be a white guy and her be black, because
Yeah.
the way they're treated is different. And as much as he has the modern thinking of like everything is going wrong, he also doesn't have the power to change it.
Yeah.
And she can't either fully. She can do what she can, but she can't do everything that she wants to be able to do, because it could cause her to not be born.
That's true. That's true.
So,
But
what are your thoughts on the parents not telling the children that they, and then
Yes.
sending them away with no information about where they're actually from and whatnot, and also the fact that Iola was actually pro-slavery while she was being schooled.
I was just like I had to put the book down at that. I did. Like I went and told my husband, I was like, her parents did her dirty. Like I sat on the steps and had a whole conversation. Now, granted, he hasn't read this book, but a whole conversation with my husband about that was I think their parents did them a complete disservice.
Yeah.
And then, but of course she had to learn the hard way, and that's unfortunate, but I was sitting there like that was wrong. However, I do see that they wanted to educate their children and they knew there were barriers. And that was the reason why I sit there and I say that Henry, I think, was kind of woke in other areas and delusional in another, because he was aware that opportunities for anybody with Black blood is limited. So that's why he, of course, hid that from, the masses. But for them not knowing, that's a culture shock. Like, you think
like it was huge.
Identity issues. That's the ultimate identity issue right there.
Yeah.
But in the end, Iola is the only one that suffered, and that's where that maybe sexism thing come in there.
And if she had known, then she would have known not to fall for someone coming for her. Like she at least would have been aware. And it kind of comes into modern day stuff too, because you think about the immigration. So people who are over here illegally, if the parents don't tell them that they came over illegally and they were born here, they're not aware that that's a danger of like being deported. And so it's like, in one way, you're protecting your child so that they don't have to live in constant fear of things changing and their world being upended. But on the other end, you're not protecting them because they don't know that
they could get blindsided at any time.
But I think she would have been blindsided anyway, because when I think it was a lawyer came to get her, he didn't say, hey, your parents are died, I'm selling you into slavery. He said, hey, you're on the deathbed, I'm coming there, to be an ally to you. And then flip the script on the train,
Yeah, that was like, oof.
Yeah, that was tough right there. I was just
again, I like you. I put the book down and just went, I just need 5 minutes, because
sometimes you have to do that.
Angry.
I've done that a lot with this book. If y'all ever know this book, Book of Night Women, look it up. I have put this book down several times. But it makes you, I like historical fiction. I do, because it lets me know where we've come from and, where we're going. And it ends in more optimism sometimes than what the reality is. But sometimes I gotta detox,
I
think you're gonna have a lot to say about the next one.
But also, I also thought that, like, notice that for Iola, right? The guy basically said, the lawyer said, there's debts to pay because now they're property. And with the looks and whatnot of Iola, he felt he can get a much prettier penny, and I'll let the boys slide. So then that's that sexism component there, because they both are basically look white. So selling this white dude into slavery, people were like, oh, he's white, so he may face probably a lot more backlash, but it would, I guess the face of it will look funny if you're trying to put him in the fields and everything, and people's like, who's this white guy? So he probably wouldn't fetch as high of a penny because he's not that strapping buck, how they talk about,
know what school he was at. He didn't know where to find the son.
Oh yeah, that too. Yeah, that too. But he didn't even bother. He was like, I'm not gonna bother then. Okay, we'll just settle the debt way Iola and we'll let the guy go. And so he didn't bother to look for him.
Want to do it. He didn't even want to do it.
That's
he did it because money.
Money rules it all. Yeah. But yeah, I felt bad for Iola when she walked in. Mommy, how you doing? Oh, I wish you wouldn't have come. It's like, but I will say though, when it comes to okay, and I've read a lot of books about slavery and ancestors and all this other stuff. I did feel this book was tame. I felt this book was a very much an educational book. I mean, you had this narrative in there, but I felt like it was just more for education, like an essay. But I felt that it was very tame in the details that it said about like slavery itself.
Yeah, because the two plantations that we get to see, like through the characters' eyes that are living there, where one, of course, was Iola's parents, and they were very nice and kind to their slaves. And then the other plantation where Tom and them were at was they didn't like having the overseers come and take care of stuff. So they were a little safer than some of the other places, but they weren't treated quite as good as the ones at Iola's. But then when Iola becomes an adult and Tom finds that she's at this other place, she's being abused and whipped, and she talks about, SA and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So you do get to see that that's happening, but you're not experiencing it firsthand.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree. Also, just the tone of the characters, they're very hopeful throughout the book. Even when horrible stuff is happening, they're cracking jokes.
Yeah.
Which I think it's a good entry point. It might be a little more digestible for someone that hasn't read anything like this before.
It's not as confronting as some other books. Like a lot of books, as you said, they are quite confronting. This one nowhere near as confronting, but still gives you a decent glimpse into the situations and whatnot without going over.
And that's what I was thinking when it came time to reading the book. I was like, this isn't a book about like slavery. It's more about the idea of the Black people behind slavery and getting out of it, and where do we go in the future? Because I think Harper's and Harper, is that her last name? Frances Harper. Yeah. She's like an activist for like women's rights and to promote the advancements of Black people. So I think she was more of educating, of getting out of it versus, hey, this is the details of everything that went into it,
Because technically most of the book is set after the Emancipation Proclamation. So they're all technically freed at that point. But it's like telling someone that the president has passed an order that freed them and actually getting the slave owners to let them go are two completely different things.
Yeah, you got Juneteenth. Remember that? Yes, exactly. But I also thought it was interesting that how in the North, we were talking about like the Civil War was fought, right? And they wanted to, the North wanted to abolish slavery in the South. But I thought it was really good that she stated that while the North wanted to get rid of slavery, that did not mean they were pro-Black. Like a lot of them were still downright racist too. They just didn't like the institution of slavery. But that don't mean they're like, hey, let's all be comrades. So there is still some issues that'll stem from that as well.
See, and that's something that we didn't really learn. There was a lot of miseducation from being in the South that you don't learn about it. So you're always kind of told like, oh, well, slavery was bad. It was immoral, but it couldn't have been that bad because even once some people were freed, they stayed on the plantations where they had been slaves. And it's like, yeah, but then you read this book and you're like, oh, but if they don't have any money to go buy property or to establish themselves, and then you've got all of the other stuff happening with the white man trying to keep them down through like taking away some of their voting rights and just manipulating them. Like there's so many things that go into it. And then some of them being too old to try to travel to like a place that might be better for them. But also the glorification of the North. Because then you see in here, it's like, no, it's not what you think, because they considered the freed people to be basically like horses that had went over into the territory and they could claim it as spoils of war. And it's like, okay, people are not horses. Like, these are not the same thing. But when they
No.
heard that the soldiers were coming, they were like, I've overheard they're treating us like we're the spoils of war. So if we can just get over there, they won't send us back.
It's back, yeah.
I think when you have nothing and you've been treated so horrible that any sort of optimism, because they don't get the full story anyway, but any sort of optimism, they're just going to run for it. So I get that, because when you come from such horrible situations or your life's not your own, it's like, what do you do, But yeah, I thought that was, I think it's interesting with the American school system because in these days, okay, granted, I don't have children, but I talk to my nieces and my nephews and my friends that have kids. The school system these days, I feel like they teach even less about slavery than they did before. Now, I'm not one of those people that I feel like we should harp on it and show roots in school and all that stuff, because our school system they don't have the time. Okay. But I feel like some of it's just kind of glossed over. Like, I know when I was in school, there were the few pictures in the history books all showing the slaves smiling, picking cotton in the history books that I was taught. And I'm like, no. And I learned most of what the horrificness of what slavery was, because I was told, like you, Heather, oh, it was bad. It was a bad time in history and let's move on. And then glorify all these generals with the battles and stuff on both sides. But I learned most of the horrific nature of exactly like the oppression and a lot of the violence and a lot of the like physical, sexual, all of that stuff through movies. Movies and talking to my family and validating those movies are correct. Because I've had a lot of people, like, how you were saying, people were saying, no, the slaves were taken care of. What's the issue? I've had people tell me that to my face. No. I've had full-grown adults in the last 5 years.
Oh my God.
Tell me, I don't understand why Black people have such, we won't go into all that, but I'm just saying it's a lot of stuff that you're like, wow, okay. So, but yeah, there's a lot of things that stem from that. But yeah, but the North is definitely glorified, but I think when you're on a plantation and that's your life and you've been oppressed and everybody that's been oppressed, if somebody brings some news, hey, the North is fighting for us, they're we can go here and they're going to protect us. I mean, whether that's true or not, you're going to grasp at that when you have somebody cracking a red white next to you. So I completely understand that.
Now here's the other thing. So once they were freed, they tried to get all the men to join the military, and then they had them in separate regiments. Well, my question is, were they then putting their regiments as the frontline fighters because they're like, oh, they can take the bullets first because their lives are less valuable, and we'll just stand here in the back.
Should we cover that in that was covered in the book that where what was his name?
Tom?
No, I don't think it was. Yeah, it was Tom in that where it was Tom where he put himself in the firing line to protect his regiment and whatnot. But there was another part in there, and I think it was Robert.
Yes,
Robert.
Right.
And he was saying that because the officer was saying to him, "But you're white, you could go into the white regiment."
Henry, yes, the son.
And he chose to go into. Yeah, he chose to go into the, for lack of a better word, coloured regiment, and it actually said there that the North was sending them out first to put them into the firing line and whatnot, and sending them out to scout and all that sort of stuff. So, yeah, I don't know.
When I read all of that, I was like, if you're coming to free me, you should let me evacuate.
Yeah, like, I'll be over there, and you
just finish it off.
No, but you know what? They were letting everybody fight. I wrote down a quote. It said that the war is a rich man's war, but a poor man's fight.
Right.
Yeah. So all the wealthy plantation owners and all retained their way of life, while the poor whites and the Blacks don't benefit from the fight, but they're still part of it, and they're obligated to be part of it. Because the North has the idea that we're fighting for you. You need to be, basically earn your keep, because what else are they going to do? This is kind of like their new jobs, to promote it. but also they needed those regiments there. But the whole idea of segregated regiments that lasted, wasn't that even into the 1900s too? I remember reading something about that. Yeah, so I don't know. So I thought that was interesting.
That was still a
you gotta
thing in the
think.
1950s.
There's always been different forms of segregation, whether it be based off of color of skin or gender even. So like with the military, I remember I'm only 32. And so there's been women in the military for a long time, but the types of jobs have been very different. And so there was like women officers who were allowed on ships, but there were not women enlisted who were on ships.
Yeah, and you had the Women's Army Corps and stuff.
Yeah, and because there was the whole front lines thing, like don't put women on front lines. So if they're going to be like in the danger zones, we don't want to do that. And so when I was one of the first women on my ship ever.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah. And it's like, that's crazy to think because that was in 2008.
1948 is when the military was desegregated.
Yeah.
That is a long time.
I think some of the World War II, there was a lot of talk of segregated regiments and whatnot.
It's just interesting how people continue to come up with new ways to value some lives over others. And it's like, have we not learned?
But I don't think we ever will. I think there's always I think one of the great things about people is the differences amongst us. I think that's beautiful that we can talk about it and still get along. But not everybody is as open as minded as we are. So, and so that's what's unfortunate when you are, but as a minority, you're forced to be open-minded. You really are. You have no choice in this world but to be open-minded. Some people have that privilege not to be. Unfortunately, a lot of those people tend to be in power. So then you kind of have that struggle.
Yeah.
But I thought it was interesting when isn't it Harry? Harry, the son. Is it Harry? Yeah, I think it was Harry because the dad was Henry. Yeah, so when he got the option to, which is funny, he had the option. I guess Iola did too, of serving like with the white army or the black army, the different regiments. I like that they chose to serve with the black regiments because they felt like that they can do more good and didn't want to deny their race. And I thought that was really, really special. Yeah, but
I liked how Iola, like as I said earlier, like when she was in the North at school, she was pro-slavery, and then when she realized that, or when she went into slavery herself and was treated poorly and all that sort of stuff, I found it really like compelling that she decided to embrace her heritage, to help educate the masses essentially, and really throw herself into it to bring this situation and what she had gone through. She used it as a positive. Like a lot of other people would have
taken the easy way out.
Yeah, like not try and fight against it and all the rest of it. And and just as you said, take the easy way. I really, really like that about her character, how she just really got in there and educated herself and wanted to make a difference for the younger generation coming up and help them move on for it. Because I think that was sort of the underlying part of her character, is that she wanted to help the younger generation to see the bad that happened, but also to see the hope for the future and help them navigate through that. Because I'm sure that there would have been situations where, people just didn't want to navigate their way out of it and just, as you say, take the easy way and not educate anybody and just move on with their life and whatnot. So I really like that about her character. And I felt sorry for Dr. Is it Gresham?
Yeah, he was all in.
He was so in love with her.
Yeah. But he wanted her to hide her heritage. Yeah. And I'm like, she was like, I'm not denying who I am.
Yeah, and like that just makes him as bad as her father then. And I can see it, I can see it from her point of view.
So she came around the second time, but then she was like, yes, you're like, I'll let my family know. It don't bother me, none of that. And she's like, sometimes you don't know what the baby's going to come out looking like.
That's
You
true.
gonna be
That's
okay
true.
with that?
That's true.
And
Yeah.
then he hesitated.
I thought
Yeah.
that they were going to get together, I will say, like, because he kept popping up. So it kind of shocked me she went in a different direction later. But I was thinking, oh, they're going to bridge this gap somehow and he's going to become awakened and stuff. But, you know, she
But
was strong in her character. But you
yeah,
were saying earlier about her wanting to educate and basically advance like Black people, you know, and that kind of is what she put her mission towards. And I was thinking at that time that, okay, she went from this privilege, which I mean, she grew up privileged. She didn't know who she was. She grew up in this privileged, kind of naive fashion, which is odd seeing all these slaves around. But her family did treat them well. And when you grow up like that, then you just assume, you know, that's how it
that
is.
everybody
But
does that.
yeah, but she went to school and then like you said, she was like pro-slavery is not a big deal. And then she went back home and everything, the script got flipped. So she had a progression that she had to come over to. And I think that she realized, like with these other people, like when the Black people got released, they have a progression that they have to go. And I think she was probably thinking of her progression. So she's kind of have it with them, and then they need like a somebody to hold their hand, you know.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I was a bit, I get what she was talking about, and I think it's more from my modern perspective that I initially was a bit offended towards the end when she was talking about we gotta teach them to, you know, bathe. What did she say? Teach them to bathe and home economics and educate themselves, you know, because she was talking about how more Black people were in jail and being targeted. And that was where a lot of the modernists come in of, you know, some of the social commentary of what's going on today. But I just was like, initially, I was like, she's talking about bathe and teach them to be pure and all this other stuff and good citizens. I'm like, why wouldn't they be? But then I was thinking, they come from a time period where they came from overseas, from Africa, you know, in the bush, you know, having their own way of life and language and stuff, and were basically kind of assimilated into a certain role in society as being oppressed, as other people having power over them, probably not having regular meals and bathe. I would say maybe people on, you know, plantations where they weren't treated well. I don't know exactly. Like her dad says he treats them well, but I don't know exactly. Well, actually, you know what we're thinking of as a whole? I'm thinking of just her dad's, but I'm just saying that Black people were put into a particular role. And so to be integrated into, I guess, proper society as what they deem proper society, you know, they would have to have a complete change because, you know, they might not be used to being fed or being allowed to walk into a house and go into a store and things like that, you know, or bathing regularly, you know.
And predominantly, like from my understanding, which is quite limited, from my understanding, the African Americans weren't educated.
Yeah, exactly
So
that.
They wouldn't let them
so
read.
Yeah, you can read. Yep.
maybe from that point of view, that's sort of like it probably could have been worded better as opposed to like bathing and regular meals and all the rest of it. Yeah, like she's just used antiquated language in that section. I think it was more, I got the feeling it was more that she wanted to help them to become educated because they
Yes.
had not been educated. So that would have been across the board, you know,
Yes.
that for health reasons you need to do X, Y, and Z so you can be healthy. And I just think Frances Harper just used the wrong language there, possibly. It could have been worded a little bit better, I think.
Well, she had it overall. She was looking at a few different things. I just kind of picked and choose. Like I agree with the education and stuff. It was just some of the other little things that she got into she got into the small little nitty gritty things. And I was like, huh? But you know, some of these people might not have had it. Like, let's say you're on a bad plantation where, like in my book, the guy wasn't feeding them regular meals and wouldn't allow them to bathe, and then saying there's some people may be where they're not allowed to bathe. So I think she was talking overall, but she was just saying, as a Black culture, we can't go. Like she even said that because there was a discussion about shipping slaves back to Africa, and they were like, that's not an option. So they have to be here in America. We have to figure out how to make sure that they're integrated into society, able to sustain themselves and be educated as this new population to somehow
Yeah.
be respected. And if you have all these whites that are educated, driving, well, I was going to say driving cars, driving their buggies, having their house, going to school, things like that, then Black people need to be doing that too. And they might not have the background just on their own to be able to do that. So having institutions or conferences or whatever, methods to be able to teach them, then that would help as a whole to benefit the race. So I understood where she was coming from. I was just like, hey.
And she really wanted to teach them how to read and write. And I think that how the author did their dialogue was so cool because you saw dramatic differences between Robert, who had learned how to read and write, and the other slaves on the plantation. Their dialect was completely different because Robert's sounds like me. I'm a Southern girl. I drop those G's. I add T's. I do all that kind of stuff. And then the other ones, it's almost like you're deciphering a different language. But then you think about it, and like sometimes people will criticize books when they read it when it's got the dialect written by that. And it's like, but do you not understand that if someone literally they're coming from a different country, they don't know English at all, so they're having to listen to and figure out the meanings to the words themselves, learn how to communicate, and then if they can't picture the words in their mind, how do they pronounce them properly? You can't. Like, how? That takes so long to do.
That's why audiobook helps, I think, when it comes to that. Like when the dialect's different, so you can actually hear it. Like I commend some of these narrators in the audiobooks. They do a really good job.
They do a good job, yeah.
I thought it was interesting though. I think it was Robert. Wasn't he the one that had the greasy paper or something he put in his hat because he wanted to read?
Yes, he wanted to show everybody. Well, I thought he was sent out and then he I know what you're talking about with the letters written down.
Yeah, I think it says Tom. Tom's go through lengths to learn to read. He put greasy papers and letters in his hat. I thought that was just interesting.
Because he got caught with a book. He got caught with a book or something. He was trying to learn the letters and so then he started writing it on paper and putting it in his hat so he could still study it. Yeah. And I really there was an interesting little part there where the doctor and his friend, I forget his name, that was gave another doctor an essay or a paper, and he really liked the paper and everything. And then as soon as he found out that he was biracial, basically threw his hands in the air and stormed off and wanted nothing to do with him after fully praising him.
Not only that, but he said, "Oh, I can spot them, what's a mile away. I can tell by their eyes."
No, here's another thing I thought was funny about that guy. I'm telling you, I wrote these little notes. It said that he thought that Black people were inferior, and he thought that they benefited from slavery because they were able to learn Christianity. I had to put the book down then too. I was like, okay.
The talk about religion in this book was so interesting. So interesting. I was like, I think I would have a hard time accepting. I wouldn't want the white man's religion if they're coming on there telling me, don't steal from my slavers, don't misbehave, don't do all this other kind of stuff, and then simultaneously beating people. Like, what?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. It is hard to believe in a religion when the religion justifies people oppressing you. So yes, I completely agree. That was a big theme throughout this book, religion. It kept coming up a lot.
But then some of them were like, they actually liked the religion itself. They just wish that those people would actually take to heart what they were preaching. Because if they were, they wouldn't have been doing none of that.
I agree. Some people interpret their religion their own way.
White preachers coming over here telling us some morality.
That was that was really
goodness. I want to talk about Tom because Tom. So Tom, he decides he's going to go and he's going to join the war and everything like that. He spots Iola, seeing that she's being mistreated. He thinks that she's amazing. She's so beautiful. So he gets her released. She becomes a nurse. And then Tom goes out on the field. There's like 6 people in a boat. And then there's people shooting at them. And they're going to cross the water and catch up to them if they cannot get the boat off of the land that they wound up running over. So Tom is like, either all of us are going to die or one of us is going to die. I volunteer. So he gets out of the boat, pushes them back into the water, and gets shot up like 6 times. No. They haul him back into the boat, take him in there. And then we have this lovely part where like Iola is singing to him and Robert overhears, and it's this lullaby, which we find out later that is going to be what links Iola and Robert, because they're actually related. He's her uncle. And then Iola kisses Tom.
Yeah, on the head.
And
Yeah.
That white doctor is like, I don't understand why.
He's like, oh my God.
But did y'all cry over Tom? Because I cried over Tom.
I was sad. I put the book down there too, because I was like, no. Damn it, Uncle Daryl. Is it Uncle Daryl? Uncle Dan? What's that like the name? They were my favorite characters.
Uncle Daniel.
Uncle Daniel, yeah.
Yeah, Uncle Daniel. That chapter 3 in his story was good.
His wife. Okay, so we gotta talk about Daniel too. So Daniel falls in love with a woman on a different plantation. He asks his master if he can get like a slip or whatever to go see her, which I did not know was a thing back then, but apparently you could get permission to go to other plantations to see your like loved ones or get married and have kids and all this other kind of stuff. So she has kids, and then then her kid dies, and she has to leave the kid to go get like milk 20 cows. And when she comes back, they have taken her dead child away from her cabin and buried the child. I'm like, that right there is dramatic.
You didn't even get a chance to say bye. Yeah, that was sad. Goodness. I thought that the whole idea of getting to leave and stuff, like, okay, overall, this book, like I said, I don't think this book was about like the institution of slavery, like the day-to-day, this is how slaves live, this is what they went on. Because I felt like these plantations these people were on was very ideal. Like you basically get a pass, you get to go marry somebody from another plantation, they throw a wedding. Like, I'm like, this is not most of the plantation stuff that I heard about when it comes to slavery. So I just thought there was a whole lot of idealism and things that were really simply solved in this book. Even when she was going to go find her family, like every step of the way, it was like, oh, somebody knows somebody. Oh, let's leave right to them, you know? So, but I just thought that was interesting that they were able to have this relationship and the slave master condoned it and everybody went about kind of like not that it was easy, but I'm just saying, I just felt like all the ducks kind of went in a row a bit.
But if you also think about that situation with the passes, it kind of makes sense because they're always splitting up the families once they're old enough to be split, because then you don't want to escape without being able to get your family out too. So you're more likely to stay on your plantation, and they're basically creating more property when they reproduce because then that child becomes the property of the master. So it's like they're breeding animals, but it's people. And they're just like, okay, I'll let you procreate. You giving me more stock.
But with the women, they will, I mean, I can't speak for every plantation and all and every person, but some places were definitely much more humane, if I want to use that word, than others. Like some places were harsh and others were others. Like there were places where a woman gives birth and they take the baby and have some other lady breastfeed it, you know? So, you know, it was just different. I just felt like in this book, the whole family units, the slave masters strove to keep them together, but that's not always the reality, and probably most of the reality. If it's property, it's whatever benefits the slave master, because you have this woman, he can breed her to anybody.
Well, a lot of the slavers were sleeping with the women, which I wouldn't even say sleeping with, because they're not sleeping with them. They're
yeah, and Girl, you really want to read a book that's talking about the harshness and the reality of slavery for people? This book right here. I'm telling you, Book of Night Women, Marlon James, um he's from Jamaica. And this book is raw. I don't think I was prepared for it, but it, reading it right after Iola Leroy, it's kind of gave me a completely different experience with the book, like difference from Iola Leroy. Alan from Big Heart Books and Classics turned me on to that. We're doing a buddy read. We're doing a live show next week. If y'all interested in really talking about it, you'll be like, oh my gosh. But anyway, yeah, I just felt that they were very tame, and we said that before with the aspects of the slavery in this particular book of, oh, we're going to get a pass. I'm going to allow you to marry her. Didn't they, or was it this book or that book where they threw a wedding, I guess? They had a preacher actually come and have the wedding for the two people.
I remember there was the jump in the brooms, but I
No,
don't.
you have that. Yeah, you have that. But maybe there was the other book where they actually had a pastor come for the wedding. But yeah, but even the idea that they're honoring that marriage, and a lot of slave plantations is like slaves can't get married. That's part of where the whole jump in the broom come from. But a lot of slave masters don't honor. They're not really caring about your family unit. It's like, they selling off people's kids right after they're born. So I don't know. I just felt it was very just a bit tame compared to a lot of bad. Like there wasn't any horrible situations. That sounds so bad. Hold up.
Other than what was referenced of what happened to Iola.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I just think it's one of those ideal situations. Like if you're going to be a slave on a plantation, I felt like the situations they were in, besides the one she went in, which they didn't even detail her, basically being poured out to different places. They just kind of glossed that over. But I just felt it was just kind of the ideal slave situation, if you want to call it ideal slave situation, where they weren't like excessively beaten and, families being completely broken apart, but I do think that Henry was a more tame, that's the term I'm just going to stick with, tame slaver, and maybe that had to do with the fact that him and Marie were together in their delusional world. So
yeah, that was a strange little world they had the cat going in there.
Yeah, he should have just like went to another place and just passed her off as white. Like that's what I would kept thinking.
Like I don't understand why didn't they just go north? Like they knew what the situation was. He just
didn't want to get rid of all of the slaves, and he might not have been able to transport them with him.
Nah, he could have had an overseer oversee the plantation, and then him and her live up. Or you know how some of the women like they follow the seasons or whatever. I am here. I season in Florida for whatever. I don't know. I was just like, why did you stay down south?
They both knew the inherent risks that they were facing, and they chose to stay in the south.
Yeah,
and like I go north.
Or you know what he could have done? He could have, okay, for one, not tell Lorraine that she's black. And then two, if she's basically the white mistress of the plantation, the worlds are this small because, people don't be traveling like they do now. So, and the slaves aren't going to say, hey, mistress there is really, a little bit of black. You could have just been like, she's white and call it a day. So I don't know, whatever. It is what it is, but okay. What's your next talking point?
So the next talking point, was there a moment in the book where you were just like, whoa, justice? Because for me, it was when the meanest slaver that we had read about in the book, when they started introducing alcohol because they were trying to keep the black man down and dumb him down by getting him using a bunch of alcohol so that they couldn't think and prosper and all this other kind of stuff. And what wound up happening was he had abstained, but the slaver got all boozed up, lost all his money, and then his previous slave bought the plantation and the guy became homeless.
That is just dessert.
I was so happy about that.
Oh my God, that was funny.
It couldn't
I,
have happened to a nicer bloke.
I know. There you go. There you go. Yeah, I forgot about that one.
Oh, and like, yeah, you're sitting there going,
Yeah, yeah. There you go. Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to figure out any ones that I don't know. I can't remember. I just remember all the like little shockers. Like, ah, I'm gonna have to skip that one. What about you, Nicole? Or what were your like your just desserts got that
that
in there?
that scene there definitely, like, he got his comeuppance for sure.
I liked Iola finding the other guy that was white passing and them
Yeah,
getting together.
Yeah, that was the doctor.
the second
The
one.
second doctor,
It
yeah.
starts
Yeah,
with an
the
L,
second
right?
one. That and the fact that what's his name, Doctor
Gresham.
Grisham, yeah, that he introduced Iola and
Yeah,
them together because he realized that he wasn't going to be able to be with Iola, and I think he registered that he did have some prejudice there, and that he was never going to be able to be with her, but he wanted her to be happy, and they were introduced and hit it off. And I think because they had that common ground, that's why the characters come together, and they had the same ideology as well. So I thought that was really a really rounded out way that Frances Harper had introduced that character. The fact that the other guy was saying I can spot them anywhere,
yeah.
and all the rest of it, and then up in arms, and that character didn't just leave. Like, when I was reading it, I felt like, oh, this character's just to sort of throw it in there, but you're not going to see any more of this character. But then when the doctor introduced Iola and that, I'm like, that was well rounded. Like, it was really good. They had the same ideology, and the doctor realized that he was never going to have her, but he still wanted her to be happy. And yeah, I like that part of it, that storyline there.
I kind of felt sorry for Dr. Gresham at times, though. I was just like,
Mm.
He
I don't
became
know.
a better person through the process
Yeah,
of
he
having.
did. Yes, he had a transformation. I agree.
Yeah, yeah, because he started out like very confronted with the fact that Iola kissed Tom on the forehead to say goodbye as he was dying, and he was so confronted and conflicted about that. Like, um, and I think he even said, I'm probably getting the wording wrong, but he said something along the lines is, like, I understand and I want to um help them and all that sort of stuff, but I would draw the line at kissing one. And
Yeah.
yeah, and like that was quite a confronting statement for him, but I appreciated the fact that he was open to hear other people's opinions and learn, and he progressed through, I think, and became a better person for it, even though he still had some prejudice, and and it was wanting her to lie about her heritage and stuff like that, which wasn't great.
I like that that was fleshed out though, because that to
Mm,
me is a reality when it comes to you meet a lot of people that people want to be PC, they
mm,
want to do things, they want people to think of them as being aware and being open-minded. But when you actually start confronting like some of your biasness and actually delving into it and the reality comes out, be like, oh, I do have that, because you might not
mm.
even think that. And I thought that was
Yeah,
really good of him,
yeah,
because
I
he
think
would have had an
and that
issue long term.
yeah, like it, and I think that Francis Harper really worked that storyline and
Yeah.
his progression, his character really well, and got
Mhm.
that point across really clearly.
Yeah.
That you even though you don't think you have those biases,
Mhm.
you do.
Yeah.
You will have them if you've grown up in this particular way. They are there, and it's up to you then to better yourself and to make yourself aware of those problems that you have, and not be so blinkered, I guess, is what she's done there. And I really appreciated that storyline in this book.
Now that I'm thinking about it more, that you're saying it that way, I think it's a good thing that they didn't get together, because I kept hoping that they
Mm,
would get together.
mm,
And I'm like, I think that's a good learning experience for him that
mm.
they didn't. So, yeah.
And I
And then
think
she also found somebody that was in the same boat as her, too,
Yeah.
somebody
Mm,
that's also white passing. I think they
mm,
have that commonality.
I think she learned from her parents' relationship that even though there was happiness in it, there was just things that he would never be able to understand.
Mhm. Yeah.
And also that
Some of
fear of, like, that fear, as she pointed out, you can't, you're not always going to know how a bubba's going to come out looking.
Yeah, that's true.
And that fact that he came from a very affluent family, and her concern was, how are they going to react? You might be okay with it, but I'm marrying into your family. How are they going to react? And that's a big thing, like, especially back then, as you were saying, Courtney, their worlds was so small, and family was the be all and end all, really, like, of a lot of families. And so her questioning him on that to make him realize that while you might be okay with it, other people aren't going to be, was very key for that storyline playing out.
I think you have to actually, and that's what's unfortunate though, especially at the time. Like nowadays, people don't care so much about protocol and about what somebody else think. We're like tough. But back in the day, you really do need to think about that. So the idea that above her and his happiness, because if they were probably in a little bubble, they probably could have been happy, like her parents. They were in their little bubble on the plantation and they were happy. But outside of that, or if somebody comes into that, it's a whole nother ball game, and you got to think about that. And I think it definitely came to fruition when he died, because that was unexpected. It's not like he had a long illness where they can prepare. It was like
yellow fever.
Yeah. And then I just found my other note too. Eugene, I've been calling this guy Henry the whole thing. His name is Eugene Leroy, right? What I thought was interesting is that if he took her just as a lover and even just had a bunch of kids with her, it would have been fine. It's the fact that he married her was the issue. And that's what I think is really funny when it comes to people saying like black people are inferior and all this other stuff. But this is the whole thing with slavery in general, of you're seeing these people are inferior, but with the women, definitely tons of liberties were taken like it was no big deal, but if he would have just slept with her and had 20 babies, people wouldn't have blinked an eye. It was the fact that he wanted to put a ring on it. That really was
because it raised her status. Then she became like his equal. And then
exactly. A lady, basically, yeah.
And they're like, how dare you, But yeah, that was really nuts. Let me see if I have any other notes.
Well, obviously, I had a lot of thoughts. Like, I don't annotate, and there's a lot in here. And like Savannah, my daughter, said, "Oh, I'll read that after you, Mum." I'm like, "Yeah, there's a lot of scribble in here. You might want to get your own."
2-hour long video where I break down each chapter.
I know. I was looking at that at work. I got off work at 7, and then I was like, "Darn, I gotta go."
It's all written down in, like, I've got comments, and at the end of it, like, all the red tabs are the end of chapters. So I've got notes at the end of chapters. And
you're about to do an essay project.
Well, apparently, I just pulled up Sparkle Notes while you guys were talking before. And Harper's career was not limited to writing essays and literature. She was an influential in reform movements and everything like that. And I think you covered that before, Courtney. So she was very much a activist and whatnot. And she also was very active in establishing Sunday school for Black children, helping the launch of the National Association for Coloured Women and promoting voting rights for Black women as well.
Yeah,
she was quite the activist back in her time. And so she was born in 1825, and this book that we've read was published in 1892.
I can't get over the fact that almost everyone that I've talked to had never heard of this book.
Yeah, same.
I haven't either. I've been telling a lot of people about it. Thank you.
And she passed away in 1911, so she had quite a long life. So yeah.
What did she die of? Did it say?
No, it doesn't say. And it also doesn't say where she was born either. I haven't been able to find that information.
What other books did she write after this one?
Just having a look now.
I could imagine what barriers she went through just to get this book
published.
And I don't know how widespread it was like before, like during her lifetime versus after, you know.
It says here that Harper wrote this book during the women's era, a period from 1890 to 1910. So it must have been that era where a lot of women were being published. And I think, because if I remember correctly, the Bronte sisters wrote in the 1840s, that sort of era, and their books were under pseudonyms, and it wasn't until that period of time that they actually came out in their name. So that is the same sort of, if I'm remembering my history correctly. I could be totally wrong, but yeah. I haven't got any list of other books. She's written a lot of essays and stuff like that.
Very educated woman, you can tell.
Just like what you were saying with it coming off like a British classic when you're reading it.
Yeah,
she like that. The time period too, you know.
Yeah. She also published. Harper was the first African American woman to publish a short story, "The Two Officers," written in 1859. And she was also known for poetry as well. So she's got a lot of stuff. Like, she had quite a lengthy life as well, which is interesting, especially for that era. Lifespans weren't as long.
Did she make money off her literature while she was alive?
I haven't got anything about that.
I would think she must have, because it says in here that she had went to like every state in the South except for Texas and Arkansas. So you have to have some money to travel.
Yeah. Well, I know she held women's conferences and things like that. So I don't know if, you know, I mean, you never know where they get their money from with that. But I was curious if her literature itself was something that made money. Like, there was a well-known Black writer, Zora Neale Hurston, that I heard about lately, that she wrote this book, Their Eyes Are Watching God or something like that. I don't know if you heard of it, but anyway. They said that she died, even though it's a popular book, and I think even during her lifetime, I think it might have even been popular, but she died broke. Her family or whoever actually had to take up a collection, basically a GoFundMe this was before GoFundMe, but to bury her. And I was like, wow, you know, but yeah.
I imagine there would have been a lot of writers out there that didn't get paid for their work.
Yeah. Yeah, but it was a good book. I did enjoy it. I definitely not something I would have thought of otherwise.
For me, one of the interesting things was the correlation of things that were happening in here, where you can kind of trace that this is the origin of things that are still happening to the Black community, especially when it comes to voting and housing.
Yep.
Because the voting, it's like, okay, well, now we talk about things like gerrymandering. Which, if y'all don't know what that is, it's basically like there's so many votes you get for different areas, and it's supposed to be based off of like the population in the area.
Yeah.
And you think that these lines are clear cut, but no, they got like these little jagged strips and sections, and all it is here's the minority populations. So we're going to give them less voting power by jerry-rigging it this way, and then we're going to give more voting power to the other people.
Yeah, you get those boundary lines. Yeah.
And it's like in this book, they were already starting that with getting people into alcohol so that they weren't able to get their like social standing higher because they waste all their money on booze. And then when it came to the voting, they wanted slavery to come back. So they were like, we want to vote in this person because they align with our thoughts. So you need to vote my way, and I'll give you these big bags of sugar and all this other kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. Yes, it's like a bribe. I was sitting there like, are we bribing for sugar? Yeah.
And then they would even manipulate that, because the one guy that was given sugar, the top of it was sugar, but the bottom of it was sand.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. And then the housing. Okay, so here's another thing. Whenever we talk about, there's so many shows. I watch a lot of shows. Some of them are not like majority white cast. So I watch a lot of shows that are the opposite. And there's an often thing where you'll have a Black character really bonding with the Jewish character. And I didn't know what the origin of that was. But then I read this book and I was like, oh, the Jewish people were the ones that were willing to sell them property and the white people wouldn't. The white people were like, no, we're not going to give you land. We're not going to do any of this. But the Jewish people were like, no, you can take this land. Here you go. Here you go. Here you go. Which also can be some origin of the anti-Semitism with people saying things about Jewish people having to do with money. And it's like, is this because you're spiteful because they were making money selling property to people that you didn't want to get property? And there's still the reflections of that today because there's a thing called HOAs. And I'm just like, HOAs is just disguised racism. That's what I think it is, because they're like, there's a review board. Let me see your occupation. Let me see your income. You've got to have professional lawn care. Your grass can't be more than 1/4 of an inch tall. I literally know someone whose grass was not allowed to be more than 1/4 of an inch tall. And I'm like, you're talking about an elderly woman.
Getting a ruler? What the world?
Literally, they would come around with a ruler and measure the grass. And
oh my gosh.
And that's what the HOA, they're like, you can't have so many people at your house. Like, there's all these different rules. You can't paint your house a certain color.
Yeah, I had to have a door a certain color and the shingles on my roof. I was like,
country clubs too. They're like, we got to vet all of our members. It is racism. It is a way for them to do that and keep certain people out without getting the law on them, because they can come up with whatever reason they want. And I'm just like, my goodness, this book had me thinking about all of that trash.
There is definitely
back to the grass thing. Why? What?
I'm not. See, that depends on where you go, because some HOAs take care of the grass. Like mine took care of the grass and the lawn maintenance and the snow removal.
So what is a HOA
in that case?
What is that?
Homeowners Association. It's like you pay them a fee. And normally it's in communities, but you pay them a fee and then they take care of certain things, but they have a board of directors. Normally it's comprised of people that are in that community, and then they get together and they dictate, like, you know, things have to look this way. These are the rules and standards. Okay. So you have them in townhomes where you share walls, but I've seen HOAs in areas where there's individual houses.
Yeah,
and I'm like, why am I paying an HOA and I have a house and you're not coming onto my property? That's weird.
Yeah, we don't have, as far as I know,
subdivision.
Yeah, as far as I know, we don't have that here, but we have what we call a body corporate, and that is for like the townhouses where you share a wall.
Yeah, like condos and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it's on a block, or it's a unit complex, or something like that. We have a body corporate. You pay the same sort of thing. We pay a fee. They take care of the public area of.
Okay, that's like an HOA, the condo association. Yeah.
We don't have it on individual houses, as far as like they do have our councils here, which looks after the town. So I'm in the South Burnett, and our council is the South Burnett Council, and they take care of our roads, our parks, and all that sort of stuff. And that if they've got like a subdivision or something like that, there might be a statute that says you can't build a 2-story house. Every house has to be a single story. You can't block a particular view. So if you're in a coastal area, you can't build a massive building that's going to block everybody's coastal view. So they'll have building standards, I guess, is what you would call it, for that subdivision. But individual houses, we pay land rates, council rates to the council, and that takes care of our rubbish, our guttering out the front of our house, our roads out the front of our house.
Oh yeah, that's different. Yeah, that's different. That's just like paying the city and stuff. But
yeah. So that's what we sort of have. We don't have, like, we have I think they call it it is called body corporate for units and stuff like that, but we don't.
Yeah, that's more the HOA.
Going around measuring grass.
Well, I don't know what that one's about, Heather. That's definitely targeting there. But yeah,
it's just a regular subdivision. Yeah. And we're not even talking about like ritzy. We're talking about middle class.
And these are individual homes?
Individual homes.
What does the HOA pay for? And how much is that for a house?
I don't know I don't know how it all worked. I just know I was friends with the girl and she lived with her grandmother and she talked about, I've got to go mow the lawn. They come out here with a ruler. It can't be over a fourth of an inch tall.
They won't come to my house. My house is like the bush.
Yeah. They better not come to my place.
You need to get
I've
turf
got
at
red
that
cars
point.
up the back. The grass is about this high.
Yeah, they're definitely targeting. Like, I mean, HOAs, they pick on different people for different reasons. Like, race could be an issue in some aspects. Others is maybe you're too loud or whatever. So I don't know. I've been part of a few HOAs, but they just get particular in general. Like, some people just have that's why you got to be careful who you vote on the board. And some people don't vote. Like, when that letter comes in the mail of, hey, these are the, appointees or whatever, some people just throw that letter away. You might want to be particular of who down the street is going to get on that board that wants different things. Like, I petitioned to get I had to ask them, this is my old townhouse. I had to ask them about putting a new roof on my head, new roof on the house because I was going to sell it. And it took them 4 weeks to get back. So that held me up. And then they gave me permission. And then the roof people, of course, it creates debris, which they were going to clean up. But in the middle of all of this, they send me a letter talking about, who told you could replace the roof? It's causing ruckus in the neighborhood. You did. You did. I had to give them the letter. They were trying to find me. I was like, you said I could replace the roof. But anyway, whatever. That's another story. But yes. Yes, good book. I did enjoy it. I did.
I thoroughly enjoyed it.
This was my first 5-star classic.
There you go.
I only rated it 4-star.
Yeah, I think I did a 4 as well. I think just the wording kind of got to me a bit more. And
that was my issue as well. The fact that I had purchased the book and I felt like I really did need the audio with it because of the dialect that was in it. So, yeah. But I think it enhanced the experience. Had I not done that, it probably would have only been a 3-star rate for me. But because I done the audio and reading along, I think that enhanced my experience. And it is
135 pages, but the formatting is horrible, so it's really more like a 300-page book.
Yeah.
It was an 8-hour long audiobook, if that gives you any idea.
Yeah, which is about I think the original book, I've got it on my Goodreads, it's 220 pages, I think it is.
Which makes sense, because that would be 100 pages more than this.
Yeah. Yeah, because this is only 135 or something.
But the audio is really good, especially for the dialect of the slaves. I think that was really good. They did a good job, especially Uncle Daniel. Although I do think that be particular. See if you can if you do get the audio, I would suggest getting a sample first so you can see to make sure you didn't get the audio that I got. Because the audio I got had too much at the beginning of each chapter, which the chapters aren't super long, but it kept talking about, this is a product of Harpo Audio filmed in conjunction with something. This is available in the public domain. It was this long spiel at the beginning and then a smaller spiel at the end of each and every chapter. And it just extends, it just took away from my experience, I think, with the book. So you don't want that. So I would suggest getting a sample to make sure it's not that. But I think it's a good book. I think it's definitely something it'd be nice to have something like this taught in school or at least talked about. I think
that's what I was thinking too. Like this would be an excellent introduction into schools and stuff like that, especially for a younger audience, because it doesn't have the graphic.
Yes, that's a good idea. Yes, it doesn't have all that graphic. Yes, you're right.
Yeah. And I think a younger audience would start to appreciate, and it would give them, like it has for me, coming from a different country, and I don't know much about this era and whatnot. It's given me an appreciation to go and look further into the more in-depth conversations that people have had online and stuff like that. So, introducing this book to maybe middle grade, a little bit older maybe, would be a good start, I think. to get them into the topic and not so be like it's still got some confronting stuff in it, but not as confronting as what the book that you're reading right now, Courtney. So yeah.
And I think they could handle it because I mean we talk about the Holocaust and people would read
Yeah.
like the Diary of Anne Frank and something like that in middle school.
Mm.
Because the most graphic thing I think you hear in here is just the reference to abuse that Iola had faced, but even the references to it were not blatant.
No,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was really glossed over. I agree. I agree. That would be a good idea. See, I don't. And y'all, when you,
Tom's death would be the other thing.
Yeah,
but
that's
people
we got so invested in
all
him. That was our man.
People watch that on movies. Kids have been exposed to shoot 'em up stuff.
They're on the internet, probably watching something way more horrible than what we're even reading about. But you know what? It's funny though, like when I think of classics, like when I think of Black classics, the only thing I can think of in school was A Raisin in the Sun. There was no, there was another one, To Kill a Mockingbird, I guess. But this one would be another one to add to the mix because I feel like when it comes to classics, they don't really add in any newer. I say newer, but they're still old. But Black like classics books.
No, they don't. They mainly focus on the Western canon and very very much English literature. They don't really. Some French, some Russian, but they mainly focus on English literature. Here, I know they do. They don't add in any, and even still, like some of the classics that they're covering is just because my daughter's just gone through high school, and they covered like Macbeth and like Shakespeare, and they did read To Kill a Mockingbird, but that's about it. Like nothing is really covered. It hasn't really changed since I was at school.
Yeah, exactly. I think this one will be good for Americans, specifically American school systems, because as someone going through it, when I feel like the school systems are always trying to condense to add more, but not something I think super relevant today. I think when you're glossing over the whole history and slave trade and whatnot, I think this book can help fill the gap a bit because you're getting the history lesson. You're also getting an interesting story in the mix, but also you have relevant stories that are like relevant today. Like she was talking about more Black people in the jail systems and being targeted by police. You know, I just feel like you'll have that background, or people have background to figure out why we have certain things today. And it also leads on more of an optimistic, statement about, how Black people can better themselves. And, these day and age, I mean, there has been a lot of change, but at the same time, I think that, you still have a lot more minorities on assistants and things like that. So I think just teaching about that, about where you've come from and how you can advance yourself and advance your race as a whole and get involved. And she also is a feminist. She talks about how women, period, can take, put themselves in better lights. I think that would be something to help benefit kids with things that they're not being told in school or either at home.
Yeah.
But
so Nell's just asking, is there spice closed door or open door?
Oh, closed door. It's not even spice. I wouldn't even call it anywhere near. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just a reference to the fact that Iola was well, no, I wouldn't even call that spice. No, that's the wrong thing. No, there was a hint of romance. That was it. There was nothing actually done.
No, it was definitely, her situation was definitely glossed over.
Yeah.
And how she was basically, what was it, 6 times she was sold in a short period of time?
Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't even call that the spice level, though. That's why I was like, nah, that's not. Yeah, that wouldn't even be spice. That's trauma. That was glossed over.
Yeah, like it's more trauma than spice, most definitely.
Yeah, but even the romance with Gresham and potential romance with Gresham and the other dude, it wasn't anything. There was the one time they did go to bed, but it was Yeah.
I don't even remember that.
Yeah, I think that was a kiss, and then it was, oh, I went home the next day or something. There was no spice. You're not.
Yeah.
This isn't a spice book. This is a historical book of how to how to
Trauma
progressively pass
and
the
how
slave
I was
dealt
era.
just
with.
curious because you were talking about recommending it for middle grade, upper middle
Yeah.
grade, like at
Yeah.
least 10 years old,
Yeah.
at least 10.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're the topic of wherever in school. I can't even remember in school when the whole idea of the Civil War and slavery as an institution, whatever grade that is gets introduced in, then I would say a grade or two right above that is where I would introduce this book into.
Yeah, I would say like 10, 11, 12 around that mark.
Yeah.
So that's grade 6 here. Just it's one class before high school.
Mhm.
So yeah, because our education system works a bit different. We've got infants, which are kindergarten, first, second, third. Then from third they go into primary, which is fourth, fifth, and sixth. So that is 8, 9, and 10, 11, and 12. And then that's the age range there, and then high school is late 12s, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, and senior school is 17 and 18-year-olds, and then they go off to tertiary education, which is university college.
University.
Yeah.
Yeah, this book is very much a conversation opener. So if you have people that are not brain is not developed enough to have that conversation, then yeah. So I think kids, when they're about to be graduating and thinking about their future and what they want with it, which I would say 11 to 12 is when they really should be thinking of, am I going to college? What am I going to be doing? I think that's when a good conversation like this will have, because they start thinking about ways to advance themselves.
Yeah, I would definitely not recommend this below 10 years old.
No.
But I think 10 for someone that's
a mature 10-year-old, because there are 10-year-olds, then there's mature 10-year-olds, and then there's 10-year-olds that not even at 10-year-olds.
And with the audiobook, so that they can listen and read at the same time, I think would be really good.
Yeah.
And I mean, for a mature 10-year-old, there's some of the stuff in there that they're probably not even going to fully grasp anyway.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't be super shocking to them because they're not grasping the concept of it anyway. But I think it would be a really good introduction to get the conversation going and highlight some of the topics that are in this, to highlight them and make them, maybe give them a bit of a passion to go and learn more about it. Yeah.
We read Kaffir Boy in grade 9. And by we, I mean my class, because I didn't read anything in school. So I think it could be a good educational read based on y'all's conversation.
Yeah, I never heard of that. Apparently it's a memoir about apartheid in Africa.
Oh.
Coming of age story about a boy coming up on apartheid regime. I never heard of that.
I've not heard of it either. It's another one to look at.
Yeah, school systems are not created equal, unfortunately.
Fear. Yeah.
Anything else y'all want to talk about this book or the surrounding topics?
No, I already folded my note. No, I'm good. Now, it was a good book. I appreciate y'all you bringing this book up to my attention and also inviting me to the show. But yeah, I definitely enjoyed it. I'm going to be telling people about it.
You're joining next month too, right?
Yep, passing. Yes.
Okay, awesome.
Yep. I said I'd pop in as well. I've got the book here already.
Oh, I thought that was for March, but yeah, I've got room. You can do next month.
I didn't know what it was for. I knew I put my hand up for something.
So next month is going to be Passing by Nella Larson.
Yep.
And then March is going to be interesting because March is going to be the 6-month anniversary of this book club, the I Read Dead People Book Club. And it's going to be my birthday month. And I've automated a resolution this year, if you will, that I'm not going to force myself to read anything that I don't like.
Okay.
And I gave the March a signed book, which was 100 Years of Solitude, an honest try. I listened to it for over an hour and I did not like it. I don't tend to like, so classics are already kind of hard for me to get into because I'm just not used to them. I don't like ones that are told in a very distant perspective, like where you're sitting in front of a fire and a storyteller is telling you the story. I want to be in the character's experience.
Yeah, I like that better.
So it did that, but it was also a nonsensical, fantastical story. And so I talked to the other co-host because there was only one other co-host for that one. And I was like, I don't know how I'm supposed to host this if I'm DNFing the book. You would be the only one that knows anything about it. I was like, I've listened to it for over an hour and I don't understand a thing that's happening. There was essay against a spouse that happened that was completely brushed over. And I'd read that that was in his other book too. So apparently he's got a thing with putting that in there. And I was just like, and they said the character's name. He had 4 parts to his name. Every paragraph they would say all 4 of his names. And I'm like, I have OCD. That's going to become like a little recurring thing to say his name randomly throughout the day. I was like, I can't do it. I can't do it. So I told her, I said, I've got an idea. I was like, it's a special 6-month thing. It's my birthday month. I've got a plan. If you're willing to go with it. And luckily she said yes. So there still will be her reading that book, 100 Years of Solitude. So if you were interested in it, you already purchased it, go ahead and read it. It will be discussed. But I'm bringing in any other hosts that want to join me, and that can include you, Nell, if you want to join. Just join my Discord and let me know, and I'll add you to the host group. But we're going to be talking about random classics. So if you have a favorite classic you want to talk about, Courtney, if you want to come on and talk about the one that you kept holding up, the Book of Night.
I don't think, is he alive though? I don't know if this is a classic. I don't know. I'm not familiar with Barnum Jane. Published in 2009.
Oh, okay. Not a classic.
I have to look. I have to look.
I don't think that meets the requirement.
This book might be too graphic. Y'all gonna kick me off for this one.
I was like, yeah, if any of y'all have got a favorite classic you want to talk about, you just come on and we'll all just be sharing about our favorites. And of course, some of us will wind up having the same thing. So it's just going to be a hangout talking about classics. I'm probably going to be talking about Pride and Prejudice since I haven't talked about it on this channel, and how I am much more a not Darcy, but the other guy that's in it. I can't remember his name right now.
Mr. Wick. No, it's a cute
the one
guy.
that's
The one that got with Jane, right?
Yeah, I'm much more of a him shipper than I am a Darcy shipper.
Well, I have a very unpopular opinion right here, right now. I'm not a fan of Jane Austen.
Yeah, I like her movies, but I'm not reading it.
I'm a Bronte girl. All the sisters. I started reading the Bronte sisters back in October with Maria from Red Phone Books, and we're reading all of their novels. And I'm definitely. I opened up Jane Eyre and I started reading that, and within 15 minutes, I knew I was a Bronte fan and not a Jane Austen fan. And I looked at my husband. I said, "It's probably because I'm not a hopeless romantic."
I read that.
And so yeah, so I really struggle with Jane Austen.
I hardly remember anything about Jane Eyre, but I remember that I liked it. So. Yeah. But yeah,
that was like one of the first books in school I read, but I liked it because I was forced to read that long book with those tiny little words. But I liked the storyline, but reading it, I was like, oh.
The Bronte sisters write strong women and women that know their own mind and want to forge a place for themselves in the world. I think that they do a really good job at that. I mean, Jane Austen, she does that to a certain degree, but they're still very much.
Sorry.
I thought, oh my God, my computer's about to blow up.
I'm gonna have one that goes off in 11 minutes.
Yeah, I just find Jane Austen. I struggle with her books and whatnot, but the Bronte sisters I really like because they write strong women and that know their own mind and whatnot. So yeah.
It'll be a fun discussion. Passing is its own book. It's by Nella Larson. I listened to the audiobook for that one too, and it was free. So I think I listened to it on Hoopla. So if your
I think
library
it's actually, I think it's actually free on Audible too.
Let me see if I have it here. I think my library had it. I was going to get it there. I haven't gotten it yet. Well, do you know the live show date for that?
I think for some reason I want to say the 17th, but I don't know that that's right. I'll check.
Yeah, I don't think I even wrote it down.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's free. It's free on Audible, which means it's probably free on Kindle Unlimited as well.
It looks like we never came up with the date.
yeah, okay, yeah, I didn't have it down. Yeah, let's not do the 17th. I got happy hour.
You said you got
Are we
happy
talking
hour on
February here?
I
Or?
got happy hour. I want to go.
Okay, well, okay, there's no holidays on the 24th.
Let's see. Hold on. Let me get
So
my calendar here.
basically what we've been doing, I've been doing it pretty much on a Friday as far as I can get it towards the end of the month. That's not by a holiday. So
I got the 24th of y'all. Okay. I mean, we can arrange, but does that work for you? Who else is hosting?
So it's me, you, Flossie, and Tammy, Dr. P.
Okay. Dr. P.
Dr. P. So we're gonna have fun, and then Nicole, if you want to join, you can.
Yeah, I'm reading it. I'll just log in.
We can put it on the Discord and
again.
see, because that might not work for everybody. But I'm okay for the 24th. I mean, if we got to do the 17th, I can cancel. But you know.
I've got an appointment on the. Oh, well, that's actually the 18th for me. If you do it on the 17th, because you do it on the Friday night, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, but she wants to go to her thing, so we
Happy
can
hour.
try.
Yeah. Just tell me what day. I'm the day after you guys anyway. So if you always do it on a Friday, I'm available on the Saturday, so it's all good.
That's why I just offered a specific date and time to the people that were in the chat. So I told them, "Are y'all good with the 24th at 7 p.m. CST?"
Cool.
So that would be 8 o'clock.
Can you add me to the chat?
Yes, I will. I think I already added Courtney.
Yeah, I just saw it.
And then if y'all have any comments, I think there is a passing movie.
Yeah, I was just reading that comment then. I think there is.
And if there is, we'll do a watch along at some point.
Yeah.
Oh, that'll be fun. Oh no, you know what I was thinking? I was thinking, do you know that movie Loving? That's what I was thinking for a movie. So different.
I don't know what it is.
Well, it was a movie. Loving is just it's a movie. I think that was a book, but it's not this one. But Loving is basically a white guy and a black woman fought legally to be able to get married.
Oh, I read that book. There was a book, and I read it.
I think that was a book. Yeah, but it was a beautiful story.
That was when I started to get into the whole not liking age gaps with minors, and he was 20 and she was like, I can't remember how old she was, but she was definitely a minor. So I was like, y'all, I can't give this over a 3-star because it made me
They're like, nope.
I was like, it made me uncomfortable because it's a minor and I don't do that no more. I used to not have a problem with it. Now I just think too much. Once people started talking about Me Too movement and consent and how it's so much more than maybe what we thought of consent as. Mm-hmm. And so like having that in mind of like, okay, and I've talked to, I think it was Maria from Read Find Books, which she had a very interesting point with that. Depending on what country the people are in, where they're at in life is much different. So a 20-year-old in one country, they're not seen as an adult. They're still very much so seen as a kid. They're not experiencing the same things as like a 20-year-old in the US is experiencing. So then the mental dynamics are not that varied between like a 20-year-old and a 16-year-old. So I think there's nuance to it, but it's also just like, these are what the laws are here. So I don't know. I'm trying to figure out how to add you. I clicked on your name. I guess I have to click permissions on here.
Yeah, I think you've got to actually give me permission to comment in there on that. But the passing is only a 140-page book, so
It was
um,
very quick.
yeah.
The ending is very interesting. The book, it was not my favorite, I will say that, but the ending was interesting, and I think the conversation will be good.
Mm. Well, this one actually has my book actually has leading questions in the front.
If you want to use that,
Mm.
we can go off of that.
Yeah, I'll take a photo and send it through to you, and that's like some of the classics that I've got. Like Maria, she reads a lot of classics off the Gutenberg project, so they don't have the further reading or anything like that. So I've got a lot of the Penguin cloth-bound classics and whatnot, and they give you further reading. They have questions. They give you all the footnotes and explain the language and why it was used in that terminology and all that sort of stuff. They have huge introductions. They have notes on the text. And all that sort of stuff. So they make it where on the free versions don't have that always. So yeah.
Yeah, if you want to do that, even if you want to just, since you have the questions, if you want to kind of lead that one, I'm good with that. Like,
Yeah.
the only reason why we have it on my channel is just for simplicity, so people know where to go.
Yeah.
So anytime if y'all are like, hey, I want to host, let me know. Even if y'all have like an additional book you want to talk about. Like, I know you're doing the are you going to do a live show for the Council Monte Cristo once it's finished?
Mm.
I want to get in on that.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So basically, the plan is because for those that are watching the replay or anything or are on now, basically I've got the serialized book club, and basically what that is we're breaking down all the massive classics. So anything that's got like huge amounts of pages in it, we're breaking it down. So the Count of Monte Cristo is we're doing Middlemarch at the moment, which I've got a live stream for tonight with Maria from Read Fine Books, and then I've got the Count of Monte Cristo happening every month. Yeah, it's huge. And so we break it down how it was originally published back in the day. So Middlemarch was published bi-monthly, and there was 8 volumes. The Count of Monte Cristo, we couldn't find definitive amounts that were actually published, so we broke it down into 10 chapters each month, and that's all we're reading. And we have a reading sprints for it. But when we finish the books, we'll also have a live show where we'll discuss it in more in depth. Middlemarch, we're actually discussing that as we go because we're finishing each volume bi-monthly, and so that's how we do that. And it's going to be good once we finish all these books. Like at the end of the year, I'm going to have like books this thick all finished, and I'm like, yes.
You could almost do one for every like 250 pages.
Yeah.
Or every 300 pages.
Yeah.
This thing is 1,000
pages or something. I don't know. Mine's up there somewhere.
It's
I was in the bedroom.
something.
So yeah, I at the moment we're just doing reading sprints. But yeah, it is a good idea to have a live stream, and I can definitely key that up, and you can come and join in and drop your 10 cents worth in.
There's 1,065 pages.
Yeah, I think my copy's got 1,200, just under 1,200 pages, I think.
I say this is my favorite classic, and Iola Leroy is my second favorite. But when I was in high school, I was in the honors. So this was one of our summer reading books that we had to read. Yes.
You said one. I would think that'd be just the one book.
No, we had to read like 2 or 3 books. I think the other one might have been, I don't remember what the other one was. Might have been like Joy Luck Club or something that was like 400 pages. Or that might have been in 9th grade. I can't remember.
I never read that, but I love the movie. One of my favorite movies.
But I read the abridged edition. I didn't know. So I read a 500-page version of this 1,000-page story. So either this one is going to make me love it even more, or it's going to get a lot slower and I'm going to hate it. So I don't know.
We done not last week, the week before we started it, and we did the 10 chapters, and it read really fast. So I have the full one. I read it really very fast, very hard to put down. Took a lot of self-control not to keep going.
Right, that's where I'm at right now because I want to keep going. I'm like, dude, you got him in a cell. I want to see I know what happens because I've read it before, but I'm like, dang it, if I hadn't read this before and known where it was going to go, there is no way I would be able to resist.
Oh, I had to put it in my room so I couldn't see it on a daily basis because I'm like, I wanted to so pick it up. Yeah.
It's hard to not continue.
Yeah.
Gotta love books. That's why we're here.
That's right. Exactly.
But yeah, I don't know if passing is based off of the passing book or if it's something different.
Yeah, I don't know I can't attest to that either.
I guess I can look for a trailer since I read the book.
I haven't read the book, so it'll be the first time for me.
It kind of felt like they just sit around in a country club talking the whole time. But the ending is interesting. So
okay. Cool. Awesome. Well,
I might have listened to it too fast. But there's a lot of interesting topics. And it gets into the whole white passing dynamic again, but post-slavery. And also how
this was published in 1929, wasn't it? It's 1929. This was published in 1929.
And then we got a white passing theme this year because we're also reading those Cedar something, Cedar House.
Cedar House, yeah.
What is that called? Let me look it up. What is that called?
Something Cedar House. I think it's about two siblings and one chooses to pass and one doesn't, and how their lives vary based off of the path that they chose. But yeah, when I was looking at books, I knew that it was going to be harder to find books that had diversity in it that were classics just because the limitations in getting published. Even with the classics that we see written by women, they were extremely wealthy. So like the barrier to publishing was just so much. And so I had to look
to tell you about this.
Several lists.
I got this book not too long ago. It's called Diverse Spines. And it actually has a lot of
classics.
It's books that they recommend by different authors and whatnot. It's a bit of it's got artwork and stuff in it, but it gives you the classics that they think that you should read. Also from many different cultures, though. It's not just African American; it's across the board. So it also gives you the legends as well. Where's my camera? There it is. There's a lot of really good books in here. So like the Joy Luck Club is in here. A Golden Age, Kite Runner, all those sort of stuff. So it's quite I got it because of I'm reading around the world. Contemporary fiction, classics, it's got all sorts of stuff. But that is quite the interesting little book if anybody's interested.
You said it's also contemporary too, so it has some current.
Yeah, it's got across the board. So it's got kids' picture books, just to get diversity into your reading. So it's got kids' picture books. It's got middle grade books, influential book people, coming of age.
That's cool. Sounds like something for everybody. I like that.
Yeah, centering on queer stories, love and romance, classics, authors recommended, mystery, horror. So it's covering all genres. But I came across this. I think it was on the Women's Prize for Fiction blog that I was on, and then there was a link talking about diversity in authors and stuff like that, and I clicked on it, and this came up as an ad, and I also got the book journal to go with it, so but it's called the Bibliophile Diverse Spines. If you go onto Scribd, it's actually free. Like it's on Scribd. You
Oh,
can have a
wow.
look on there as well. So
That would be good because I was doing list, and then of course the qualifier was that the author had to be dead. So I didn't really have any modern classics because I wanted them to be dead to qualify. And then I also wanted them to be either free or like 99 cents so that everyone would have access to it. And then the other thing was that I wanted fiction. So I didn't want any nonfiction books. I didn't want any poetry, nothing like that. I just wanted like strictly fiction. But I found a couple that were diverse. So we have, of course, this month and then next month as well. And then March, if y'all do read 100 Years of Solitude, that's written by a Colombian author. That one is more of a modern. So I think it came out in like 1965 or something like that. So it's pretty modern. They're actually going to be adapting it into a Netflix show. So I will still watch the Netflix show. It just was going over my head when it came to the book.
Yeah, and
And
you might
then,
like if you watch the show and then read the book, because sometimes, like, I don't like to say that, but sometimes with some of those weird books, like I just read Frank's Kafka, The Trial. That is like a bizarre book. That if that had a movie, I probably would have watched that. In that case, I would have watched that first and then read the book because it would give me a better understanding.
you can picture what's going on.
Yeah.
And then for
Anyway,
June is Pride Month. So I was like, I need to find like an LGBT classic.
Okay, well, I might be able to help you there.
Well, the first thing I thought of was the picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. I think that's like the most out and proud classic writer that I know of, or at least highly speculated.
Okay, well, here's another one. Okay, Claude McKay was ahead of his time when he wrote Romance in Marseille in the 1930s. It was one of the earliest African-American queer fiction stories covering radical politics, racial identity, sexual preference. 90 years after he wrote this bold novel, it was published for the first time in 2020.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And it is actually in that book and under the classics, and that's it there. So there you go. His name is Claude McKay. So capital M, little c, capital Kay, and Claude.
And
like,
the book, this book club keeps going. I'm gonna need more suggestions. I mostly went on books that I already owned, and then looking for some diverse picks as well, just so we weren't all reading like old white dead men.
That reminds me of a sprint. I guess it was a sprint. It was probably just a discussion of old white men that I ran across on YouTube yesterday, and I was like, I got to get out of here. I was trying to support some of my, I have a very diverse, eclectic group of people that I subscribe to. Just because you read classics and I might not, don't mean I show support, right? So I'm in there. I'm like, hey, let me hear a few minutes. And they're talking about how some author that they were reading didn't believe that any Africans had any sort of merit in writing unless they were Egyptian or something. I was like, oh, get out of here. I was just like, at the wrong time. I'm just like, you have those people that sit there and they want to all think they're intellectual and we're having this, and I was like, okay, this is so not. I was like, hey, y'all, how y'all doing? Let me get out.
I came by, I said hi.
Yeah, exactly.
And then the other
guessing on hold at the library now. I found that book at my library, by the way. I just put that on hold so I can take a look at it.
This one here.
Yeah, that one. I just found it.
The other diverse read we have is for September, and that is this one, The House Behind the Cedars by Charles.
Yeah, I think I found that one for you, didn't I?
I had found it first, but
we found it at the same time.
I judged by a picture, and I've learned my lesson. Because I saw this white author, and I was specifically looking for a diverse book, and I'm like, no, Why would I read about a Black person's experience by a white author?
Yeah.
But then I looked more into it, and he was white passing. And I was like, okay, I understand now. And there's so much more nuance to it. And I didn't understand just the amount of people that were white passing in that time period. I don't know why, but I thought it took several generations. And then I read Iola, and I'm like, oh. And then of course, like we've already talked about my ancestry, it would have been my mom's grandmother's grandmother. And so it was like, that's not that many generations apart. Oh man. I'm just learning that race is so much more than one dimensional. There's so many things that go into it. And because you got to think about things that happened in your ancestors' past, it bleeds into your future, even if you don't see the connection.
Yeah,
that's true.
Everything builds on itself. So it's like, it's more nuanced than I ever thought it was. So that's the other reason with like wanting to make sure I'm finding those books as well, because I am just so ignorant about so much of that stuff. And ignorance isn't a bad thing if you acknowledge it and then try to become more educated. So I'm just embracing it, realizing that I've got shortcomings.
I mean, it's good that you're looking beyond yourself. So that's because a lot of people don't even bother, you know?
I mean, well, that's exactly right. A lot
I
of
always
people
like to look at,
I'm
I'm a big fan of perspective, no matter what. I like to read a lot of different perspectives and kind of see where I hone in at, though. I felt like I haven't read a lot of books by Black authors in my life because, you know, they're not really publicized. You got to go looking for a book. So,
yeah, and a lot of times it is that it's familiarity is what you gravitate toward. It's a marketing thing, and it's a proven principle. If you see something like 70 times, then it's front and center in your mind. So for instance, if you're watching TV and you don't have a car yet, but you've been watching TV all your life and you constantly see these Geico commercials with the gecko or whatever, then when you get old enough to buy a car, who's the first car place you go to get a quote? Probably Geico or State Farm.
Let me go find that little lizard.
Familiar with it. So it's the same thing. Like if you're getting books and they've got a bunch of white people on the covers, you read it, you like it. Okay, you get another book. That's what's always presented to you. It becomes familiar. So you're like, oh, this is good. And then you get a cover that's not a white person. You're not familiar with it. So then you're like, I don't know. So there's like a slight hesitation. So the only way to combat that is to be like, okay, I realize that I have this hesitation and then I should try that book, because the more familiar I get with it, then that hesitation goes away. And that goes even with just like big books or adult books or classics. It's anything. If you're intimidated by something, then try it enough times and then that will go away.
Yeah.
So this year for me, the thing I'm doing that with is big books. Big books and adult books. I've been kind of slowly getting into the adult for the past 2 years because it was intimidating. I'm like, I'm not familiar with adult books. I don't think I'm going to like them. Like, so I'm getting into them now.
You've been more YA, right? You've been more in YA, young adult fiction?
Yeah. 90% of my shelves are YA.
See, I never really got much into YA. I've always read adults. Like as an adult, I've always read adult, but big books. Like this one's like 416 pages, you know. So I'm trying to get into bigger books this year. Although I'm still keeping some smaller ones too, but trying to get into
my average book size has always been around the 500 pages.
Wow.
Yeah, that's always been my, because I use books for escapism. So I like to fall into a story and get really involved in that story. Yeah. I don't necessarily go into a book to analyze it. I don't care how it's written. I don't care if the author uses grammar or whatever. I don't. Yeah. I go for the story, and that's what I'm always there for. So for me, I read short stories, but I struggle with them because I just feel there could have been so much more put into it.
Yeah, get in and get out. Yeah.
yeah. So I've always really liked the fact that I read bigger books. So for me to gravitate towards a book that's 1,000 pages or anything like that, it's just 2 books to me.
Yeah. See, I like
altogether.
3 to
So there's
400.
more
I
in the
still think it's good enough, but yeah, I wouldn't mind. There's some books that are longer. Like that's one thing I found about BookTube. I don't even understand. Like I didn't realize till I got into BookTube that so many people were into YA. But with kids these days having such a low attention span, in my opinion, then I'm like, they're actually sitting here for 500-page books, and there's 3 in the series. But we are part of BookTube. Not everybody reads. So people that are on here are people that are going to read, not the average person I see on the street that is on TikTok 24/7 and doesn't read at all.
See,
so that's another thing.
My two youngest daughters, one's an avid reader, one isn't.
Yeah.
So my daughter that's just left home, she is like me. She'll read a book that's 500 pages, and she has been reading adult content since she was about 14. My 16-year-old, she's a she's a dirty little birdie. That one, she likes the smut.
Hey, that's my girl.
Yeah, so she gets right into the smut, and
like a good romantasy.
She likes those dark books and whatnot. So. But I'm like, you know what? If that's what you like to read, that's what you like to read. It might not be my cup of tea. It might not be your sister's cup of tea. It's your cup of tea. Read it. Yeah. If that's going to make you read, go for it.
That's why I'm gravitating away from contemporary YA and more towards new adults or 30s-ish women. For like the romances and stuff.
Yeah, I want to see what happens.
You're going to become a dirty little birdie now.
Exactly. That pay out.
Yeah,
I agree. There's got to be the emotions there too. Otherwise, the smut is pointless to me because I'm ace and I'm just like.
I agree.
I'm like, if the emotions is what makes it so sexy, not the stuff that's happening. I don't need to know about liquids and smells. I don't want to hear that. Don't necessarily need to know about the motion in the ocean, but all the other stuff, the emotional things that are happening during those moments, that's what I'm there for.
I want it all.
We'll just take it any way it comes. I'm not fussy. I will talk. There is just one book that I want to mention that over on my Discord this month, I do a book of the month wheel spin, as you know, Heather. And for January, we spun up a nonfiction, and it's called The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks, and it was recommended by Flossie. Oh my God!
Next month, by the way.
I read that for Nonfiction November. It was amazing.
It is an amazing book. So anybody watching the replay, if you have not read it, you need to go and get it and listen to that. Either get it on Kindle, get it on audio, go and purchase the book. It is an amazing book, and Rebecca Skloot did an amazing job telling that story. I think she done amazing. Yes. Yeah. To incorporate the family, how she did was awesome.
Did they ever make a movie out of that or a documentary?
Yep.
I feel like I watched the documentary because they used her DNA and stuff and made all these medical advancements with science, and her family never got paid anything.
No.
So basically, it's telling me to preach about what? What am I going to preach about?
Oh, she's talking about the feelings behind the smut and not necessarily the smut.
Yeah.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. I wasn't paying close enough attention.
Real quick, Heather, this book, House Behind Cedars, that's September, right?
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna write that down.
And I ain't got hosts for any of the stuff after March. So if y'all want to host stuff, y'all just
I'm reading all the books, so you just tell me when and where. I'll just come and hang out with you. Not a problem.
You can just be
I'm almost an empty nester, so I'm struggling with I'm filling my time with books because I had my granddaughter living with me until 18 months ago. My 18-year-old's just moved out of home. My 16-year-old works most of the time, and both my husband and I have businesses, so we have more of a phone relationship than a in-person relationship. And so, yeah, I've got time, mate. Just send me a message and I'll jump on if you need me.
What you could do if you wind up not being able to resist the Count of Monte Cristo is you can create the threads early.
You like thick books?
You can create
like
the 10 chapter thread.
Out.
You can just be like, spoiler thread, chapter 1 through 10. Spoiler thread, chapter.
I could do that.
Nobody
But I'm not
commented on
going to.
Iola Leroy the whole month. I was like, y'all missed out on the best book.
It was good. I saw your video. When I saw your video when you went chapter by chapter, I hadn't read it. That's why I left you a comment. Hey, I'm going to stop now. Because
Yeah.
I do that with a lot of videos when I come across people and I'm like, darn it, I'm going to be back. And then I was back today and then I was at work. And I didn't even finish it before here. I waited till work was busy, but I was like, let me try to see. Because I saw Nicole's video. And then I saw yours and I was like, well, let me set aside some time. I'm working today. It was a little bit of downtime, but then I got busy with stuff and I only got through like half of it. And then I was like, darn, it would have been a good refresher because I read this, last week before last. So I remember you went chapter by chapter and I was thinking that would be a good refresher. And I just didn't get to finish it.
I still cannot get over the fact that I thought that he was happy about the Yankees and thought that they were the baseball team.
I was laughing. I was laughing when you said that. I was about to type a comment. I had to go real quick. I think I deleted it. But I was like, what is wrong? But that was hilarious.
I was drinking
modern
my coffee.
Exactly. I was like, y'all, this is just what happens.
Oh, that was funny.
I was drinking my coffee and you said that, and I'm like,
Because I was just going into it like, hey y'all, I'm reading a book and I wasn't thinking about what was happening during the book. So, and they were saying segregates. So I thought I didn't understand why they had it lowercase and they had the Yankee capitalized. I was like, what's the baseball team? Is the other one minor league?
We still like you, Heather.
I was like, this is why I do this, y'all, so that I can think about these things.
But you had a lot of good thought into that. Like I said, you have a really good introspective thought and things that I don't think of. So that's why I like watching your videos. So when you were going through, I was like, oh, I didn't think of that. And you also express yourself way better than I do too. You use less words, so that's what's good. But no, I think that you did a good job of going through that. But I was like, okay, she getting that brain fart early over with. You know, you have that brain fart. You're like, okay, it's done.
Yeah, like I'm oriented now.
Yeah, you're like, it'll only go up from here.
I understand what's happening.
That's one of those gold. What are those? Hello, Linda Sean. That's one of those goals. What they call it? Video golds, where you have like those like the outtakes that you put in that are hilarious for a video. That would be one of them.
Like, I thought this was the Yankees. The Yankees baseball team. I seriously did. And I was like, I don't understand this. I was like, I guess, you know, if you're in dark circumstances, you will look to anything to be something that you get excited about. So I was like, here they are. These enslaved people are just so excited to spread the news that the Yankees are winning the baseball season.
Run over the horse. Lady Sean, we are talking about a book. Iola Leroy, you should go and read it.
Is y'all smoking? Is that what he's saying?
No smoking. Gonna have some tea later.
My whole life. I don't need that stuff. I'm crazy enough as it is. Now, the funnest thing to do if you're going to go party, be the sober one and everybody around you be drunk. Then they get on my level.
Oh, girl. I went out with some friends the other day and I was pissed by the time I won't go into the drama, but I was like, by the time I got home.
We 2 hours and 17 minutes in. Go into the drama. Ain't nobody sticking
around. No, I don't want to get into my friend's business. Let's just say she had a rundown at the bar. And I'm like, darn, I got home. I was to my husband and he was like, why are you in a bad mood? And I don't come out of character. Like, I don't cuss and I do whatever, you know. But I was just like, you know, I was like, I went to a bar. I was there 5 hours. How I come home sober? There's no way to come home sober at a bar 5 hours. I was completely sober. It was just drama.
Oh, man.
My choices.
They be throwing the book at me. I be slapping books, but sometimes the books slap back. You dig?
Sometimes you gotta throw them books, man. When the book really good, you throw it. You know, read this book, man. The Book of Night Women. You're gonna be like, if this wasn't a library book, I would have threw it across the room. Probably broke the spine.
Y'all haven't seen it
Marlon
yet.
James. Huh?
I did. Y'all haven't seen it yet, but I actually did a review, like an actual review that I filmed of Family Affair by Debbie McComber. And when it was over, I think you had quoted me on the little review that I did that was like the wrap up, and I was like, obsession ain't sexy. And when I got done with that book, I was filming myself and I was like, I'm done. I'm done. And I threw it like 6 times. And then the dog, he was like, what is she doing in here? Because I was just like loud and hanging over the side of my bed and ranting and everything like that. He comes up and he licks me in the mouth as I'm talking. He just goes,
had a lip in the dog.
I caught it, and then I start laughing, and then he does it again, and I'm like, y'all, he ain't ever done this before.
He's showing you some love, Heather.
I was like, I kiss him on the lips, but I don't want the tongue poking out. That's just weird.
That happened to me for New Year's. I was holding my brother-in-law's pug, and I was talking, and that dog licked me straight in the mouth. I was like, oh, I threw that dog down. It's like, what the hell? When he come here to get made out by the dog?
Sometimes he lets it dart out like a little frog tongue. He just goes,
Nah, I'm done after that one.
Oh, Grammy used to be throwing her Bibles at me, Hail Mary full of grace, to put the smack down on the Bibles.
What were you doing for her to be throwing the Bible at you?
What? Let me whip you. Whip you with the word.
Oh, it's too funny.
Oh, man. I could see some people using the Bible as a belt.
Hey, Iola Leroy was doing something with that Bible.
Oh, my goodness.
It wasn't good justification.
My dad would always tell me stories. He'd be like, my dad would be like, go out and get a switch. And if he'd come back, that switch wasn't big enough, he'd go out and get his own switch, and it'd be even worse. It's like, oh,
yeah,
man.
That's true. That's true. You got to find that middle balance.
My dad just had one look like a wrestler's belt.
Oh, no.
He would hang it like by the key ring, and he would just point at it. Y'all whacked up, you know that one. So he pointed that thing.
My dad would do he'd get his belt and he'd snap it, and he'd just like, and you just freeze. You just stop doing whatever you were doing because that snap, and it was just like, oh, that's gonna hurt when it hits.
That's back in the day when kids got an actual whipping, and you know we learned. Listen, these kids, they don't want to whip them anymore, and you know, and then they wonder why they're running amok. I'm just saying.
I think whipping makes sense when it comes to like putting your life in danger, so that you remember. You know what I mean? Like something like that. But I think there is something to some of the gentle parenting, because if you're whipping but you're not telling them why, and they're not having to do any introspection, they're just going to keep doing the same thing over and over again.
That's true.
Grounding, I think, has a longer effect.
When
you're stuck inside for like 2 weeks, and
I wagged school.
Huh?
I wagged school when I was younger. I was about 13, 14, and my friend and I decided that we were going to ditch school, and I got busted because I forged a note so I could forge my mum's signature, and I forged a note to say that I was sick, and it was the week before school holidays. Well, I got found out. I got grounded for 3 months.
3 months? Gosh. Dang, that's serious.
3 months, and I was allowed visitation on a Saturday morning of my friends. My parents grounded me for 3 months. I was allowed out of my room.
You got visitation.
And I got visitation from a friend who would come and see me, like a couple of my friends, on a Saturday morning, and I had to pick which friend I wanted to see. That was
Did you have to be behind a plexiglass? You got an hour. You got exactly 1 hour.
I never wagged school again. and I towed the line for the rest of my life. I did not want to go to jail because if that's what it involved,
it's worse
I
than
ain't
that.
going.
When
And
we
it
got
worked.
grounded, we could not watch the TV. So the
Yeah.
family would be watching the TV, and you'd be the only one in your room. No TV,
I was
no
segregated from the
phone,
family.
and you had to do extra chores.
Yep.
And you
Yep.
couldn't go anywhere.
See,
So-
that's back in the day. These days, people ground a kid in the room, but then they got a cell phone, they got a computer. These kids don't even come out their room anyway. So you're doing them a
Exactly. That
favor.
would make no
Now they don't have to deal with you.
But also, I got grounded one time for 2 weeks, and my mama told me, she came in there and she confessed. She said, "You didn't do anything. Your dad just wants to have you at home. You've been out with your boyfriend all the time." That boyfriend is my husband. So
Oh, there you go. It worked out, right?
I was like, "Honey, I miss you so much." I wrote him letters.
Oh my gosh.
While I was grounded. I still got to see him at school.
Yeah, there you go. That's true.
I miss you so much.
I don't think I was ever grounded. I got a few whoopings, but I was never grounded.
Oh, we got a couple comments.
Lady Sean's talking about cockroaches and stuff.
What? Dogs do be kissing for sure. For sure, dogs be kissing everyone and everything. If the dog be kissing, let the dog cop a feel what the dog doing. My dog has jumped up when he gets excited outside, and he has bitten me in the tatas. That thing hurt. I was like, no.
That's messed up.
It's like, oh my gosh. So when he starts getting rowdy, I just shield. I
would do the same thing.
That hurt. Gabby be using to throw them bobbles at me because I've been having microwave all the bugs and grubs I be up in the backyard.
In the world.
Straight up exploding the bugs and Grammy's microwave. Yeah, I think that would warrant a whooping.
I'm trying to find Lady Sean here.
Oh man. Oh. Microwave on tap last week. Got cockroaches from the cockroach farm if the microwave them roaches for 30 seconds. Oh my goodness. You are fun. You are very fun. Oh my goodness. Grounded me for the mildew farm incident a year ago. I got all the molds and mildews from the mildew farm loose all up in Granny's house, and she be coughing. Oh
Where
my
is that
goodness. Even though Granny been ground me, I started a new mold farm in her bathroom. I can find it with the cockroach farm. Oh my goodness. Oh my
That's
goodness.
comic relief at the end of the night.
Oh yes. If y'all ain't got anything else, I guess we can call it a night. We're almost at 2 hours and 30 minutes.
So much for the hour stream.
I mean, I figured we'd go a little over because there's just so much to talk about with that book.
Yeah, there is, very much so. And I think it's going to be a book that keeps popping up in conversation. Very much so.
Yeah, it's definitely a great book. I'm going to be telling people a lot more about it. So hopefully it gets more love on the internet. Because a lot of people don't know, like, I mean, I think that's pretty significant. First book published by African-American woman. I mean, especially amongst the African-American community, I'm always trying to promote reading and stuff in the community, but I think this book is
like it's
so relevant today.
It's got so much plot. It's so few pages.
Yes.
And so I'm just like, just an introduction to classics, period. I think it's a good entry point. Yeah. Just for that alone. It's engaging. And a lot of the classics, when I think of them as being very long and drawn out and not really having a lot in them. Mm-hmm. Which is one of the reasons why I love the Count of Monte Cristo, because it's got a crap ton of stuff going on in that book. And then this one, it's
some classics can be long-winded and just they've just put words in for the hell of putting words in.
Yeah.
But I'm discovering too, like, because I'm relatively new to classics, although I've read a fair bit in the last 12 months. I'm finding that there are a lot of books out there and short classics that are really, really do pack a punch, and fit a lot in, and they're not long-winded, but they still have the descriptiveness that brings the story alive. And yeah, so I've got quite a few up there that are a lot shorter, and I really like them. Like they're so good. So if you haven't, you need to just go that little bit further and just look at some of the shorter ones, not the longer ones. And
I got
from
the
different
whole box
authors.
set of Jane Austen for Christmas, and her shortest one looks to be Sense and Sensibility, so that might be the
Mm,
next one that I read just for fun.
mm,
But I also got
Mhm.
Robin Hood and I got The Little Mermaid, so
mhm.
I'm really
There you go.
excited.
You can read The Little Mermaid and watch the movie. Have you
It's pretty.
read this Persuasion everybody keeps talking about?
Persuasion,
No.
yeah.
Yeah.
I actually like, out of Jane Austen's books, Persuasion's probably Northanger Abbey and Persuasion are my favourites out of all her books.
Okay.
I haven't read Lady Susan, but that's an unfinished book of hers. But yeah, Persuasion and Northanger Abbey out of hers is, in my opinion, are her better books.
All right.
But I haven't watched the adaptation. Everybody hates the new adaptation.
See, I waited because I want to read the book first.
Yeah.
But now that you say it, everybody hates the adaptation, should I watch the adaptation first and then wait several
Mm.
months and then read the book? Because I
But
think
see,
how
I don't think you'll hate the adaptation if you haven't read the book. I think that's where the distinction is, because the people that are hating on the adaptation, and I'm assuming we're talking about the Netflix adaptation just recently been released. I think if you've read the book, you're going to hate on the adaptation. If you haven't read the book, you're probably going to like it.
okay.
Yeah, so I think that is the very much the distinction there, because everybody that I have watched that have basically hated the adaptation, they've all read the book. They're all diehard Austen fans and all the rest of it. So I think that there is a little bit of that. If you're not a diehard fan, you probably will enjoy it, and you haven't read it, you're going to enjoy it, because from what I can see, it looks all right. But I haven't watched it either. I've just seen the trailer. So yeah.
All right. Well, we're at 2 hours and 30 minutes, which makes my OCD happy. So I've done that before on previous live streams. You'll see me talk about, let's just go another 15 minutes and then it'll end on an even number. All right,
Hurry
y'all.
up. You got 10 seconds.
Yep. Thanks for coming. We'll see y'all next time. Bye.
Bye-bye.